November 7th to order. First on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Town of Burlington will be holding the November 7th, 2024 meeting as a hybrid meeting. The governor issued an executive order on March 12, 2020, authorizing remote meetings under General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, and extended by Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, including permitted remote meetings and participation until March 31st, 2025.
As always, members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast, unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in any specific item on this agenda should make plans for an in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. Those seeking to attend remotely may do so the following: townofburlington.webex.com, and the access code is 2342-570-9101. Please be aware that using your web browser to log into the meeting will not work for remote participation. Please access the meeting using dedicated WebEx software, which can be downloaded for free at webex.com. If you are experiencing difficulties, we recommend logging out of the meeting and then re-entering. Those looking to participate remotely, please raise your hand and staff will send you a request to unmute at the appropriate time. This meeting is also being broadcast on the BCAT government channel, which can be found on Comcast 99, RCN 15, Verizon 41, and streamed on Facebook Live via the BCAT Facebook page.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to have a motion, please.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to take items 7A and 7B together and out of order for discussion purposes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0. Okay. This is 7A is a continued public hearing of an application for approval of special permit pursuant to 4.2.6.10 restaurant, fast food order and takeout of the zoning bylaws. 271 Cambridge Street, ARC Projects Company LLC is the applicant. And 7B is a continued public hearing application for approval of site plan 271 Cambridge Street, ARC Projects and Company LLC is the applicant. Motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to continue these items to the planning board meeting of November 21st, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0-0. Thank you. Next, motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to take item 7C out of order for discussion purposes.
Second.
Second, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0-0. We'll take that out of order. And we'll go to the continued public hearing, 7C, amendment to Article 3, districts, Article 4, use regulations, and Article 10, miscellaneous and special regulations of the zoning bylaw allowing recreational marijuana dispensaries in a new marijuana retail zoning overlay district, submitted by Alex Rutfeld, town meeting member, Precinct 5, on behalf of Will Seagard. Staff, comments on this one?
So
Withdraw?
this is, as you recall, at last town meeting in September, we had an application to add a new marijuana overlay district by an outside applicant. And the planning board chose at that time to not vote to make a recommendation to town meeting. That item was continued on. Since that time, we have received a new and updated version of this bylaw. So this item C refers to the old bylaw amendment, which is no longer valid. So it's being taken off of our agenda. And later on in the agenda, we will hear from the same proponent with a newer, updated proposal.
Perfect.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to withdraw this amendment at the request of the petitioner.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 6-0-0. Thank you. Public participation. Is there anyone in the audience or online who is here to speak on an item that is not on the agenda tonight?
I see no hands raised.
Okay, being none, announcements. Staff.
Yep, so this upcoming Monday, November 11th, town offices will be closed in observance of Veterans Day. We do want to acknowledge that there was a strong voter turnout at this week's election with about 79% of eligible voters in Burlington casting ballots. And we want to say a big thank you to the clerk's office and all the election workers who worked in all steps of the process.
Great.
The Sculpture Park Relocation Subcommittee will be meeting Tuesday, November 19th at 2 p.m., and that will be in person at the Town Hall Annex Basement Meeting Room. Then the next regularly scheduled Sculpture Park meeting is Tuesday, December 10th at 8 a.m., and that will be over WebEx.
Okay, thank you, staff. So this Sculpture Park Relocation Subcommittee, is that a new subcommittee under us, or is that under the Select Board, or who's that under? So we created it?
It was created by the Sculpture Park Committee, and it includes 2 members of the Sculpture Park Committee and 2 members of Select Board,
Okay,
so that we can discuss where the sculptures should be moved temporarily during the police building construction. And since the Select Board controls the land, we need them in on it.
sure. Any other members have additional announcements? Seeing none. Legal notices, there are none. Non-approvals, none. Administrative matters. The next items on the agenda this evening are discussions on the submitted zoning articles for the January 2025 town meeting. The petitioner for each article will provide an overview of the article which they will be submitting, following up with questions from planning staff and members of the board. The public hearing for each one of these items will be opening at the next planning board meeting, which is November 21st, beginning at 6:30. This is the opportunity for all members of the public to speak on any of the proposed amendments. If you have any questions or comments, in the meantime, please email staff at the following address, planning@burlington.org. Thank you. Item 6A is a continued discussion of the Town Center signage bylaw by the Zoning Bylaw Review Committee. Who's here for that? Betsy, hi. If you could introduce yourself, thank you.
Sure. Which one? Lisa?
Yep.
Thank you. My name is Betsy Hughes. I am on the zoning bylaw review committee, subcommittee for signage. And I'm here on behalf of our subcommittee. 3 of members, Sherry Ellis and Sally Willard, are to my right, to give you an update on where we are on this project. Before I begin, I just want to introduce our consulting partners. We've got Courtney McCracken, Kevin Chong, and Zoe Muller from UTEAL on the phone with us. They're here to listen to your questions and what we do at tonight's session. So anyhow, in preparing for our discussion tonight, I was reminded of an old saying, which I find helpful to kind of put my head around when I'm faced with what seems to be an insurmountable task or a life issue. And that is that you need to start somewhere. And I think you should consider this in terms of the ongoing saga of Burlington Town signage as our journey, and this is our first step. That's why we're here tonight. And first, let's just take a quick trip down memory lane to see how we got here. This all started a number of years ago when there was a building put into the downtown area which had a very large sign on the top of it, and there was a public uproar about that sign in terms of not only residents but also businesses and others, because it was perfectly legal. And as a result of that, the ZBRC formed a signage subcommittee which consisted of business people as well as town, municipal, and others. The first place we started was what's been done in the past, because looking at signage has been something that's been undertaken a number of times. And we talked to people, we looked at documents, and to try to understand what happened, what went well, what didn't, why some things worked and others didn't. And we developed a strategy to move things forward. The strategy we put together was really about realizing that Burlington's a very complicated town, and one size just won't fit all. And we needed to figure out a way to take this project into manageable chunks. And the way we went about it is creating the concept of signage districts. We have districts for everything else. We might as well have some signage districts. So we created that concept, and in that context, we decided that we wanted to put together regulations that were understandable, not too much, techie speak. We wanted to make sure they were clear and as short as possible. We wanted to make sure that the signs were effective for the businesses, but also appropriate for the context in which they lived. So that had to be kind of in our heads as well. And obviously, you need to balance the business interests with the municipal interests, with the residential interests, which means you're not making everybody happy, but you're making, hopefully, we make most people happy. We're fortunate to have a master plan and a vision for this town, and the town center district's review and regulations that the planning board, you guys put together in 2009, gave a lot of background for us to move forward on this project. But we knew we needed help, and so we engaged a very a consulting firm which has got a lot of experience in dealing with towns to give us a help. And amazingly enough, we signed the contract in July, kind of mid-July, and had our first meeting in early August, and this is where we are today. So I think we are very fortunate to have really found the right partners for us in this project. And we gave them all the information that I just mentioned before they even started, so that we could just get out of the gate and running and not waste a lot of time going through history and all of that other stuff. In August, we toured the downtown. We had a couple cars, went through downtown. We also went through a couple of other areas of town where we thought signage had been done quite well. We shared the district's design document again with them, and then we had a plan to engage the actual businesses themselves. So we conducted 2 focus groups, and we created a survey and sent that out to 75 businesses. We got a lot of feedback and thought maybe it'd be good to share with you some of what we heard. So they come in different categories. So first was like visual. So wall signs, which I'm sure you all read our document, now you know what a wall sign is. So wall signs are very effective, and people agreed on that. They seem to like the gooseneck lights, are much better than the interior lights. It's no surprise to anybody that if you're driving down the street on Cambridge Street, the visibility from the street is very poor for a lot of those businesses. And monument signs are something that they thought would be really helpful to draw attention, because when you have frontage signs, it really, on the road, it'll show vibrancy of that whole area, that these are really businesses that are in business. And they all kind of, a number of them told us they wanted to make sure that that things are done tastefully. The new word for me is classic, as Ernie knows, that that is something that we had talked to them about. Administratively, I think they found the rules are complicated, they're long, not easy to find when they want to go find them. The process was really not clear. Some people said, oh, I know it, I know exactly what to do. And, but then I got a letter from the building inspector who told me that what I did was really wrong. So clearly it needs some help on that. Also, when we are putting in these new rules, because this is a zoning bylaw, not a general bylaw, they do not become effective immediately. So they said, you need to be very clear about when we have to comply. If we do something, is that going to force us to comply with these rules? Just be really clear on what's going to compel us to apply to them. And also to try to avoid the very expensive and complicated variance process, because that means they need to get a lawyer. And as much as I know the ZBA tries to be helpful to everybody, it does kind of cause some expense for them. And then finally, there's some general thoughts. One was that the beer garden, which we obviously had talked to them kind of at the end of that, brought in new business, and I think everybody appreciated that. And I think Melissa's brainchild, I think, is just a tremendous success. We heard it loud and clear that we do not want ye old Burlington. We want the signage in the town center to reflect who we are and what it is. And we also heard that the connection with the town businesses, the small businesses, needs to be better. And that the town needs to be more obvious in their support for the growth of small businesses in our town. So anyhow, so then we said, okay, additionally, we were able to talk to big property owners, and we found that many of them actually had signage design regulations for their areas, which we did not realize. And so we were able to get copies of them, so that we have those that maybe we can use for templates or whatever, which was a very interesting thing. We obviously have solicited input from a number of parties. I've been before this board before, and we've talked to the ZBA. Town Council has given us input as we've been going along. Mark DePel, the building inspector, is on our committee, so we get ongoing feedback from him. And so you kind of put this all together, with the plans and the town center business needs and the administrative stuff that we need to do, and then couple that with urban design best practices, and that's when we came up with the draft of the things that we're going to talk about today. A very important point to remember is that as we look at this, is that this zoning bylaw is only a zoning one, so that nothing is going to be required to change right away. And I need to keep repeating that, and that we're going to be talking about town center. So if I don't repeat it enough, please remind me, because it's something that I think that's easy to forget and can take people into a very different direction. So let's talk about what we came up with in terms of the products of all this. The first thing is the signage district guidelines, which is the larger document that you have. This is actually a planning board document that we've drafted for you. It's a companion to the town center rules and regulations, because as good as this is, there's nothing in here about signage. So that's why this is meant to be a companion document, and there's, once it's adopted, there's a process, but we won't go into that, but that's what it is. This really was designed to be visually easy to understand, with pictures, a technical guide. It's got measurements. It tells you how to measure. It tells you sizes, and to clarify the application process and requirements there. This, as you will look at how this is organized, this is organized so the first two sections talk about application process and what you need to do, and that will go for all signage districts, although we're only suggesting one. In the future, there will be more. So this is set up so that you have the process that will be for every district that may be developed in the future. And then the next section, the third one you go into, I think it's section 4 actually, is the town center signage. So this is set up so this can be an ongoing document for you guys as a tool. And it also has all the different types of signs with the names on it, so that you don't get confused about what the sign is called, because that was when we first got into, I got to tell you, doing all the definitions and understanding the difference between a blade sign and a floppy sign is like it was difficult. And it can evolve over time. This does not go to town meeting for approval. This is a document that is flexible enough so as we get into this and you get into this and the building inspector gets into this, if there are things that, maybe, gee, we want to change this a little bit or change that, you actually have the flexibility to do that. The second thing we did is we drafted articles for the bylaws for the town meeting approval in January. The first is to establish the whole concept of Burlington signage districts, and then there's a map that goes along with that. And then next was to create the bylaw. And the bylaw starts with definitions. The definitions are really going to be generic, because those can go for any signage district. We listed all the different kinds of signs we could think of, based on a whole lot of different inputs from different places, and put definitions in there. And then homed in on our first district, which is the town center signage districts with the requirements and the table that goes along with that. So the town-centered signage district, that's what we're talking about. This is it. This should look really familiar to you all. This is the town center that you have defined on your map, only now it's green and as opposed to the color that you had it before. So it goes from about the high school down to, I always say Jimmy's the restaurant because I really like their breakfast, but down into that area. So the one last thing I want to just mention, and it's not an issue that we're even going to talk about today, but I think it's something that has come up in every meeting, which is, so this is great, you do this, and people don't have to comply with it until they have a change. And so what, can you do anything to try to move this along a little bit? So we had our friends at UTO put together some thoughts, and this is just a few things. One is around providing financial assistance. All the programs that they are aware of do provide some form of financial assistance. And there's a number of things you can do it for, and these are just some ideas of what the categories might be. The funding mechanism, we all care about that, could be things like waiving fees that the town controls. We can waive fees to people who comply early. We can look for grants. There are state grants, federal grants potentially available. Some of the grants will require that, okay, you can, if you, a business contributes, it's like a matching funds kind of deal. And then they provided some of the potential federal funding sources that we could reach out to. And Melissa, who is so good at all this, I'm sure has a number up her sleeve as well. And then technical assistance, which is something I thought was really interesting. It seems pretty straightforward to me as to how you go online and do all of this stuff. A lot of these people don't have computers or use them or anything. It is not easy. So for us to offer up as a town, get some volunteers to help people actually fill out the forms and do all the stuff that needs to happen, and they don't have to worry about it, is probably going to be a pretty significant benefit. So I wanted to just share some of those ideas with you tonight. And again, no decisions, just kind of, this is something that might help us along. So, but what we do want from you tonight is your questions, obviously, feedback that we can get from you. If there are concerns or issues that you see with this or suggestions you want to make, that would be it. And obviously, as this moves forward, we really want your support. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes. We're going to go to staff. Comments, please.
I just want to say that this is, I'm very excited about this. Since I've worked here, I've always heard that signage is a very political issue, and it's really hard to kind of wrap our head around. And I'm really glad that it's coming from, town meeting members and also an outside consultant, kind of taking the politics out of it a little bit. So very excited about that. The one thing that we will have as well, so should this be adopted, as Betsy said, this board will be adopting those those signage district rules and regs. And then also there'll be a separate map, separate from our zoning map, that's just going to be signage districts. So that is all I have.
Great, thank you. We'll move it over to the board. Let me start with Member Sutherland, and we'll swing it around over to Mr. Covino and back home.
Sure.
Thank you. This, obviously, with the design requirements and the bylaw itself, a lot of work. You can tell a lot of thought went into it. As it relates to the bylaw specifically, one of my main questions is, so I know you have in here the definition around obsolete signs. They shall be removed within 90 days of vacancy. I guess, how do we handle the enforcement of that? And then my second question will be, how does it apply to if somebody has an awning? If somebody has an awning, like how will that then apply to like the awning as well? In terms of if the awning has a sign on it, does that include removal? What does that then do to like the outdoor facade? If the tenant's not still there, can we ask the landlord to have to like fund the cost of it? I think for me, I'd like to see it not, the cost not go on anyone new that would come in, but open to what you or the consultants think.
Yeah, I think in terms of the enforcement, that would be the inspector of buildings. So that one's pretty straightforward.
Can we
And-
add like does it make sense to put in the bylaw, like what would happen if you don't comply with that? To make it clear?
Daphne, if I may,
Yes, go ahead.
we already have issues with people not, people not complying with zoning bylaws.
Right.
We have blinking signs. I think that, to Ms. Sutherland's point, we need to have some type of enforceable penalty that's actually going to bring people to the table, so that if they're putting these flag signs, they're putting blinking signs,
Yeah.
if we're going to do this, let's add it in now while we have everything, up on the table. And so that the building inspector can say, you know what, shame on you first time you get a warning, shame on you second time, now there's a financial penalty to it.
I think that's in place
I think
anyway.
a good way to maybe approach that, and we could talk to the consultants about this, is to reference the fact that there would be a penalty, but not say what it would be, because that will change over
Right.
time, and you don't want to have to go back to town meeting each time.
Understood.
So we'll take that back with them
Okay.
and talk about how we deal with that.
That in word.
In terms of the enforcement, I think, there may be an issue, again, a separate issue, maybe it's a staffing issue, I'm not sure. But the responsibility for enforcement is pretty clear that it's in the building department. And so some of it is maybe they're not aware. And so we just need to figure out, there needs to be a process for that. Again,
Yeah, if I may interrupt, I know there is a process. So when I've dropped the dime to the building inspector, he and his team have worked on that immediately with a warning, and usually that works. And then after that, there is a schedule, I think, with regard to, existing schedule with regard to penalties. So I don't know if we have to create a new one, because it's already in place, and they do react. I think it is the knowledge that it's there and it's non-compliance.
okay,
So,
But I think like if we can add something in
Something,
here,
just
a se-
reference the
yeah.
fact there's a penalty.
Yeah, and then I think an and to that would be who pays the penalty, because if
The
somebody
owner.
leaves and they're not there anymore,
I think,
property owner.
is it the landlord? Is it the previous owner?
I believe that, we'll talk to the consultant. My
Yeah.
guess is that that's something that the landlord's ultimately responsible
Yep.
for everything that happens in their space.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I don't think the town should prescribe who needs to pay it.
Okay.
I think that's a little overreach, but I do think that it is, if there's going to be a penalty, maybe we just say, subject to fines and penalties, or something like
Yeah,
that, some
yeah.
generic term,
Yes,
that makes sure that people
Little
understand
bit
there's
of-
going to be some teeth behind it.
little shot across the bow there, yeah.
And can we prevent any new people going in until that fine is paid? Like how, I think I'm still,
Potentially put a lien.
yeah, like I'm still, because like if we don't say it's a landlord, the landlord's gonna be like, I don't care, like the person left, that's on them, whatever.
It's always going to be against the property, the owner of the property. It's a violation on the property.
Okay,
So the
okay.
owner of the property is going to be ultimately liable. So
Okay.
my guess is they're all smart enough probably to have it in their leases, that if there's a violation and there's, and there's penalties, you'll be liable for that. So they all hold.
They'll fine, okay.
Retain, you give them first, last month, whatever it is. They'll make sure they take it out of that when they deal with their, releasing the final funds at the end of the lease period.
Okay, that's a good call.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, sorry, one other thing. I know that the signage guidelines will be an ongoing discussion. My only thing that I saw quickly there was, in the last couple pages, I love how you list out the visuals of like the examples of what doesn't work, and then on the next page, you have like, what about it didn't work? I think though, this is such a nitpicky thing, so I'm sorry.
Okay.
But I think each different section, it has the same exact letters. Is there a way for us to differentiate the letters so that I'm not, because you're giving different reasons, but the same letters?
Chapter then letter, maybe, or.
Yeah, almost like a,
3A.
yeah, like a 1A, 2A.
That's a formatting thing, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a formatting thing.
Okay.
But these, I love how you are like, here's what's wrong with that. So this is great, thank you. That's it, thank you.
Thank you. Member Impemba.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. You guys have done so much work, but I'm caution one thing. All the work you put into it, And it'll go into place, and like you said, it's not gonna happen overnight, but you're gonna get people in town that are gonna be, and it's not the majority of people. It's once in a while, you're gonna get some, it doesn't work, see, it's not working, see, I told you it didn't work, because it didn't happen yesterday, you know, I mean, that's, and it's, you know, people that understand it, they understand. You can only create the law, you can't force them to do it. You can force them to do it when they want to change over and they wanna do something to the building, but you can't just go in and force people to comply actively to the laws, and they don't understand it, but we still have them come before us on a regular basis saying that the overlay doesn't work. See, it's not all changed, it's not all, you know. But everybody who sees new buildings and new development going down there, we have forever hearing, I am anyway, positive feedback about how much nicer the buildings are looking, and, you know, what we've been able to hold their feet to the fire on, and I think it's just something people are gonna have to be patient with, because it's not gonna happen overnight, you know? But thank you for all the work, I mean, that's
You're welcome.
so much work you guys have done, and it's gonna be such a big difference. in the
And I think that, you know, when we've encouraged applicants to come before us to put stuff like gooseneck in, and they have, I think that ups the game with other folks, you
Yeah.
know, from
Yeah.
a competitive standpoint, and say, hey, we can do this too, and we've seen that happen, so. Ms. Natola?
I think you guys have done a great job with all of this. I was just wondering, how do I get a copy of that? That was really good what you put together. Can I get a copy?
Of the slides?
Yeah, of that
Yeah.
whole.
We can send it out to you guys too all after
Thank
this.
you, because that was great.
You're going to see it a lot. I have a feeling this is going to be,
We'll see you next week.
on the
Yeah.
21st,
See you in 2 weeks.
it'll be back.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It
yeah.
might change a little bit. I just don't want to bore you, but yes.
No, but it's.
I'm gonna have you-
A lot of hard work. I really
Yeah,
think
thank
you've
you.
done a great job, all of you.
Thank you.
Real good.
Great, thank you. Mr. Covino?
Sure. I'd like to echo everybody's comments, and thank you for Betsy and Sally and Sherry for all the work, and I know it's a lot of work that you've done. In one general comment, I had an occasion to go on to YouTube and look at some of the meetings that we've had in the past, and I noticed that if you're not really talking into your microphone, you can't hear, so just a caution when you're talking to.
Okay, thank you,
And
Mr. Covino.
I'm at least as at fault, not
Great.
anybody else. But one thing is, there is an elephant in the room, and that is some members of this board have had problems with some of the signs that have been in the town center, and I noticed that at least one of them is going to be allowed by this amendment change, and that is A-frame signs. They're allowed, but there's some specific regulations.
Right, there are
Embedded.
regulations. They can't be by the street. They have to be within 10 feet of the front door, and they can't block the sidewalk.
And you have, in during business hours,
And
right?
during business hours, they have to go in, and in inclement weather, they have to go in. And they have to be 2 by 3, I believe, in terms of the surface area, 4 feet, total height.
And they
So they're
can't be in
limited.
the parking lot itself, correct?
Pardon me?
They can't be in.
No, they cannot be in the parking lot. So it's,
Illuminated?
hmm?
Maybe illuminated?
No, no.
I think we should specify that.
I think it is specified.
I think it's in the table.
It's
It
in-
isn't, it should be, but I think it is.
If it's not, I didn't see it, but don't quote me on
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
It's a long
Just make note of
document.
that, please.
It's a long document, and I didn't know if everybody's had a chance to read through the whole thing, and I just didn't want anybody to be blindsided and
No, good.
say yes when they really meant maybe. So.
Yeah, thank you,
that was-
Ernie. I think that's, yeah, it's important. There's some things on here that I know historically there's been some resistance to in the past. But I think if well done, all of these things, and I believe the dimensional requirements in here and the locational requirements will make it so
No illumination.
it should yield a really nice-looking result.
In confirming, it says no illumination.
Right.
No illumination, okay. And the other thing I noticed, last night you made a presentation from the ZBRC, and there was some talk about window signs and what constituted a window sign.
Correct.
And I know, Joe, if you remember, I think it was Santander when they originally went in there, they had a sign like 2 feet away from the window, illuminated and whatever, and
Yeah.
it acted as a window sign and.
Well, they have TVs as well.
Right.
That are playing their, they have TVs that they're actually playing their advertisements. So it's a TV, is it a sign, is it and that's, you can see it through the window, so it's, is that considered?
So we have, anything within 5 feet is considered a window sign as part of the calculation. We're getting some pretty heavy feedback that that's too far back, because some of these stores, as you know, aren't very deep. So it could be, that could be like, I don't know, a third of the store. So if somebody has an end cap, for example, it would technically count as a sign, and that's really not the intent. So, I think we have to take a look at that, just to, in the interest of full disclosure. That's one area we know we've got some pushback on. So we're probably leaning more like 2 feet, 1 foot, 2 feet away from the window, something in that direction. But obviously, I'd like to hear from you.
Well, you may want to, what you might want to do is, it can be a certain distance if it's not illuminated. If it's illuminated.
Non-illuminated.
Well, I mean, it's hard to be able to tell somebody you can't have an illuminated sign deep into their office space where it can't be seen from anywhere, right? But if it can be seen from the window, then it should be a distance back. If it's going to be illuminated, it should be so far back that you can't see it being illuminated.
If I remember correctly, one of the applicants in the town center had illuminated casings with signage, if I think, without stating names. That is one of the culprits who have the blinking signs, who we've reached out to building departments several times, nothing has changed. And that, for me, that's a pain point, because I really struggled with even giving them the permit for that facility as a whole. So it's pretty disheartening where we're talking about signage, we're talking about illumination, we're talking about things that are, close to the exterior of the facility, and it's in your face. It's still in your face.
Yeah.
I don't want to take my kid for an ice cream and have to explain what certain items are.
Yeah.
But I'll leave it back to Ernie, and then I'll jump back in. Again, mirroring my fellow board members, you've done a phenomenal job, and I really appreciate all of your efforts. A couple questions. We talked about enforceability. You had mentioned something about you looked at urban design best practices. How does that differ from suburban practices? Because,
Right.
I don't want to be urban.
I don't want to be urban. I'm using the term urban design in that's actually a profession.
Okay.
As opposed to talking city versus town. UTIL has experience not only in cities like Boston and Cambridge, but they also have worked with towns like Fitchburg. I guess that could be somewhere in a city, but I can't remember, a whole bunch of smaller towns as well. So they've done a lot of work in all those different contexts. And again, having been here, you can see that the diagrams in here actually reflect Burlington. So you're not getting like the Somerville look of buildings and stuff like that. It's pretty custom. So that's what I meant.
And I appreciate that. I think it was more for the viewers at home, because I can see what the diagrams look like.
Yeah.
They're just not seeing that at home. So thank you for that. Has the CBA provided feedback, or do we think that they
Yes. As a matter of fact, we've been involving the ZBA right from the get-go. When Mike Murray was head, he was on the committee initially. And then I just actually had conversations with Jeff DeBona. He's given us his feedback on these documents, the areas where he has some concerns. So yes, an answer to you is yes.
may
So
I ask-
folks at home, ZBA is Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, and so thank you. May I ask what concerns the ZBA has at this point in time?
Sure. Please stand by. My notes right here.
Take your time, thank you.
Okay, let's see. He had questions about the window sign, and 5 feet he thought was too much, and he thought we should reduce that to 1 foot. He had a question about the restorative of a sign. How do you define 35%? And, if you have a sign that's fallen apart and you have to replace it, there's a 35% cost calculation that needs to be done. He wants to make sure it's really clear how that is calculated. Obsolete signs, he said, he actually thought we should leave it out and take out anything about removing them. I told him I didn't agree, so I was not going to do that.
Yeah.
That's fair. I mean, this is great
Yeah,
feedback
this is
for us to
good
have an
feedback.
understanding.
He wanted me to know that A-frames have always been a touchy point and wanted to make sure I wasn't blindsided on that. Pole signs are new. It's a new concept for us, and he just didn't quite understand it, so I explained how it worked, and he was fine with that. And, second floors, signs on second floor, you can't have an awning sign on the second floor, but actually, what it says is, if you want to have an awning sign on the second floor, you have to go to the building inspector, and it has to, under special circumstances, it can be granted. So, but second floor signage was a concern that he had.
So what would constitute a special circumstance? Just at the pleasure of the building inspector if he thinks it's special?
The way it's written right now,
Well said.
You're all special.
I think it's, if somebody wants to put in an awning sign on the second floor, it's rather than a flat no, because there are actually some buildings where an awning sign on a second floor would actually work quite nicely. Other buildings where it wouldn't work at all. So I think that's why that's there.
It's an architectural thing.
What?
It'd be like an architectural, if it's an architectural feature kind of thing, that it would enhance the building. I would, that's, I think, the gist of that.
Thank you.
And it's something we could clarify.
Yep, thank you. Go ahead, Ms.
So the last comment, if I heard you correctly, you said the guidelines weren't going to be presented to town meeting, or will? I mean, doesn't that kind of go hand in hand, where they should be at least presented, they don't have to vote upon it?
What they'll get as backup.
Okay, perfect.
So the town meeting votes on the bylaws, those two
Understood.
bylaws.
But that would be the
They will
backup.
not vote on the guidelines.
Perfect. That's all I need to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. LaRue.
Thank you. Great job. I spent a lot of time going through this. I already gave you my very few comments, questions when we spoke on the phone, so I don't have anything additional to add. I do want to say, I think that the part about incentivizing early adoption is really important, and we need to make sure that we make that very attractive. I think that's really important.
Well, any ideas that you all have, send me an email.
Okay.
'Cause I'd like
Yes.
it to be a robust list.
Okay.
So-
And then, along with what Chair Gaffney was saying, I do think we need to define special, because I don't think it's going to be clear to anyone what the criteria would be for the building inspector to allow a second floor awning. I don't know
Maybe you
what,
should say the type of
yeah, maybe we need to define that a little bit better.
Okay. The first floor sunken in, kind of like
I have no idea.
some of the
Type of
properties I'm trying to think of
Yeah.
over by the high school. Now it's kind of slanted, so the
Yeah.
first floor isn't necessarily in
maybe
the
that-
bottom. Maybe that's kind of how we
Yeah,
define
but
it.
we should define it
Yeah.
somehow. So,
Yeah,
thank
say
you
first
very
floor
much.
below grade or something like
Yep.
that. Yeah.
Yes, but thank
Okay.
you very much for all this work. Great job.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
What
Mr.
do you think?
Kemba.
No, I was going to, before we ended it, I just wanted to add a couple of things.
Yeah, go ahead.
And two of them had, one of them was the sandwich signs, I think, I'm not sure where that, the idea that people were against sandwich signs, I think that it was more that the law didn't provide for sandwich signs, and there was no regulation on them. They were putting them out there, they were putting them in the middle of sidewalks, they were putting them in places, they were hanging balloons off them. So, what happens when you hang balloons off a sandwich sign? Is that something that, because I think I'm perfectly fine with sandwich signs. I think it's the way the old-time businesses used to do it.
Right.
The barber would put their sign out there, and they'd pull in at the end of the day, right? And as long as it wasn't in people's way, and it wasn't, blocking sidewalks and doing whatnot. But I think the other part of it is, when you put a sandwich sign on, are you going to hang things that are going to, go 10 feet in the air off of that sign? And then next thing you know, because they're trying to draw attention to the sandwich sign now, so they're going to do other things to add it on to the sandwich sign.
point.
That's a really good point, thank you.
It is,
Yeah.
yeah. I
So,
don't know.
so the other thing was, and I guess you were saying, Mike, or somebody was talking about signs being 1 foot away versus 5 feet. 5 feet's too much, 1 foot isn't, is my feeling on that, and again, it's only my 2 cents worth, but I feel like it all has to do with the sign. Like, I feel like an illuminated sign within 10 feet of the front of a window is gonna look like a window, and a sign in a window, right? I mean, versus something that's not as, in your face kind of thing, could be a foot off there and not really look like a sign in a window. And so, illuminated signs, if they're facing the back of the inside of the store, shouldn't be a problem at all if they're a foot away, 2 feet away from the, but if they're facing the front of the store, then they could be a problem 10 feet away. So I think it all has to do with what the sign is, and, because we're certainly not looking for illuminated signs in the center of town, and certainly not in the windows. Even if they're within 5 feet of the windows, I think it creates a different type of a vibe, than what is trying to be created in the downtown. But those are just some thoughts that
Thank you, Mr. Impemba. Great thoughts. And thank you, you ladies and the team as well. Yeah, I've been, as a number of the members here have been on a number of signed bylaw teams and unsuccessful signed bylaw teams. So, your work to get this far is appreciated, and we know how much effort that takes. Just a couple of comments I had. Thank you for kind of putting definitions and examples of the signs. For example, when I was reading through it, it's a blade sign. I go, okay, is that a razor sign? Is that a feather sign? But it turns out blade sign's something different, and you show the picture of it, so that's appreciated. The definitions there, plus in the guidelines is the example of that, which I think works very, very well. The question I had previously was about multiple signs. So if someone had an awning sign, could they also have a wall sign? Could there be multiple signs on the same building in different categories? Or do we limit it to 2 out of the 10 options that are there?
There are a couple of different limitations. One is there are only 3 name signs with the business name on it. There's also a limitation on square feet of signage that includes all the different kinds of signs. Did I forget
So it's
anything?
a total accumulated, depending on the width of your
So
frontage.
if somebody wants to use all of their
Signs for an
sign
awning, yeah.
but yeah, you have to remember, there's also requirements like it
White
can't
space.
take up more than 75%
Yeah.
of that area. So, so it'd be very difficult, I think, for somebody to do that. But if somebody wanted to use up all their allotment of signs in one place, probably wouldn't be very wise, but,
Yep, and another comment I said when I saw when you had the kind of recommended descriptions of what should be on sign. Again, you can't define content, right? But you had a couple of things there. If you want to put the website on there, if you want to put the address on there, if you want to put the phone number on there. I know, Joe, we've talked about this in the past. You don't need all that stuff, right? Because everything's on the web, right? You don't need the address because you're at the address. The website, you've already gone there to check it out anyway. The phone number, you typically don't have that on signs these days because it's all on your phone and right in front of you. So I would recommend that you take those off because it instead of suggesting they use that, we wouldn't they could, but I wouldn't say that you recommend that. Any comments on that?
But what if you're driving down and you're looking for a certain number? Sometimes the number of it does help you.
Oh, I'm not saying, yeah. So you could put a number on there, and every building should have a number. But I'm saying, I think it said address on it, right?
It doesn't
So-
have to be 12 Cambridge Street, it should be 12.
12, it'd be 12 there, yeah. That would you need by law anyway. You'd need the building number.
you're talking about limiting on that list,
On that list, you might want to
just not
cull
include
that
those
a
things
little
and not
bit.
suggest.
Yeah, and only because if you look, maybe 20 years ago, that's what you'd have, and if you look at older
Okay.
signs, there's a phone number on it, and there's no website, but some people have put the website on it, and now that's kind of passé, I would say. So, in a phone, the address I don't think is needed.
Marlboro has a lot of that.
If they have on a monument signs to say, 20, 10, 20 Mall Road or something.
Because when I'm looking, I always thought it was helpful for people when you're finding something. Like just recently, I went to somewhere beside Leahy, but they have so many openings there, but they had the address right up there. I was like, oh, thank God, there it is. Like,
On the monument signs as you enter the plaza, not
but
necessarily on the building
it did
itself.
have the sign, but
Yeah.
then it had
Yeah.
underneath that.
Yep.
So Bill, you're talking about the sign,
Wall
the
signs,
list of
yeah.
things that are on the door and on that
Exactly
stuff,
right,
right? The
yeah.
small stuff, okay,
Yeah,
yeah, got it.
And then, and I had some questions on the wall signs as well, window signs. So we're applying that to signs that you could probably see through that are etched, right?
Yeah.
Would that also apply to kind of point of sale signs if they put up a sale sign for, bankruptcy or something like that, that blocks that? Is that'll fall under there as well?
Th-
That would be a temporary.
Yeah, that's a temporary sign. It's
sign.
under temporary signs, and there are limitations to
Okay.
that as well.
Okay. And kind of a general question, would the Papagino sign that's above the building, would that be allowed in this bylaw? It
No.
would not be, okay.
No.
Thank you. That's all I had. And thank you for all your hard work. Appreciate that. Any other board members? And this is not a public hearing. We have the public hearing coming up next meeting on the 21st. So we will take a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to continue this item as a public hearing to the planning board meeting of November 21st, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next time, too.
Abstained? 700. Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Team. Okay, item 6B, I'd like to see if I could take a motion to table that for a bit until we have our applicant.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to table item 6B.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
700, thank you. All right, let's see what we have next. Now we have item 6C is a discussion on an amendment to sections 3.1 Districts, 4.2.0 Principal Use Regulations, Schedule 10.6 Registered Marijuana Dispensary in the Town of Burlington zoning map, allowing retail marijuana dispensaries and a new marijuana retail zoning overlay district, submitted by Alex Rutfield, Town Meeting Member Precinct 5, on behalf of Will Seegert. Okay, hi, good afternoon.
Hello.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good.
evening. Alex could not make it. He recently had a baby, so
Congrats, Alex.
so yeah, and the reason, Liz explained this better than I probably can, but so we're not continuing the old one, correct? We're submitting a new one because based on some feedback that we got, we changed a little bit of the overlay and eliminated some areas, added a couple more over on, I'm blanking, I believe that's Cambridge Street, and so added a couple more properties to the overlay down there, and then also adjusted some of the language mostly for formatting and based on feedback that we got from you all, and then some other input from committees and town meeting members. So,
Okay, staff, comments?
I don't have any additional comments, except I feel like originally the mall was part of it. Is that correct? The
yeah,
mall
so
was-
we took part of the mall as actually a few different properties. And so I had spoken with Melissa and discussed her upcoming change of the use district, and we removed that as the long and the short of it, so.
And just to clarify, I'm looking at this, that the hash marks are where the proposed overlay would be, that
Yep.
the other colors are the existing zoning that's already in place. It's just the black hash marks that are on
Black hash.
those, just to clarify that.
And is there something on Cambridge Street? Where is that, down on the other side of Cambridge Street, on the
Yeah, it's-
side?
Yep.
And those are added? So let's go, how we do this, we get specifically what was eliminated and what was added.
So what was eliminated was essentially the Market Basket property that's on Middlesex Turnpike, right there. And then the mall property portion was eliminated as well. And then what was added were those few properties on Cambridge Street, right there.
So that would be Wayside, the front of, I think Tez McCall and Jack's Coal Fire Pizza and that plaza.
Where exactly?
By Wall Street, across from down by the Target Plaza.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I believe the Target Plaza
Was part of this as well?
was added, is that correct?
Yes.
That's this, where the mouse is right there, that's where Total Wine.
That's
Target is.
Target,
where the mouse
Tez
used to be.
McCall, but does it go all the way, does it include the smaller businesses that are past Tez McCall heading toward the Harvard Vanguard?
I don't, it doesn't appear, it just ends at the Target Plaza, is that correct?
Correct.
So Liz, just to help me out here, everything that's in red and then the red stripes?
It's
Just the stripes.
Right,
Yeah, the
just red
stripes.
No,
Got it.
stripes of any kind, I think.
Stripes of any?
Stripes of any kind.
Yeah, stripes.
Oh, stripes of
So
any
you can
kind.
see it over here, there's the orange
Oh.
PDD.
Okay.
So what
That-
is that, where you are right now?
This is where
That's for,
Smith and Walensky
yeah.
is,
okay.
and that,
Quarters and,
And then if you scan down, so that's Best Buy.
Best Buy,
yeah.
And what's,
Trader Joe's, Burger King, which might be appropriate.
and does that include the old School of Music, that along there?
This, I would have to double check as far as which parcel it's on, but it does continue down a couple.
And what is the parcel across the street in the red stripe, right, where your hand is?
Here is, this is one Wheeler Road.
Right, I meant, if you go further down,
Yep,
That's
It's the
that
Dunkin's.
plaza.
That's the Shell and
the new Noria.
further
Yep.
down, the bigger one.
Isn't that where Market Basket is?
No.
No.
This is
Oh,
where,
that
this is
H
where,
The purple
no,
is where
this
Market
is,
Basket
this is where Trader Joe's is.
Trader Joe's
Oh,
and
Bob's.
Bob's Furniture.
Yep.
Got it.
That, the larger purple down here is where Market Basket and
Okay.
Five
And I
Guys.
think, is Ned's on that as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Can we zoom out a little bit? So
Yep.
we can see what properties we haven't discussed?
Kind of going back over here,
So-
would that be,
So it's in Walensky's, and then across is
oh, up here, this is all of the Brixmore,
Brixmore.
91, 101, 111, where Staples is.
Does it include the plaza where Chipotle is?
Yes, that's
it does.
down,
Okay.
that is over here across from the district entrance this way.
Is that new? Is this all new
The
area?
additional parcel up Mall Road a little bit, is that new?
No, that was in the previous proposal, I believe, so,
So is that parcel the one that we talked about?
Yes, to
okay,
remove
okay,
with
from the
Melissa's
other.
activity, yep.
So
'Cause it's
that
bu-
butts
butts
residential.
So,
That's
so does
probably-
the Target Plaza.
The Target one.
So
Gotcha.
we go down a little bit towards the right.
Yep,
What is over here? What are those parcels?
this is Wayside.
Yeah.
And then this is gonna be where the Dunkin' Donuts, Eggholic, and X-Golf is in this plaza over here.
Chuck E. Cheese Plaza?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where
Atrius Health is?
The mouse
Yes,
And then moving over here, this larger plaza is Total Wine,
right next to it.
Target,
So,
Joe spent time.
CVS.
does the zoning prohibit things around like an Atrius Health, or is that, we'd have to...
I don't know, did you?
the, like a what?
That dark purple next to the stripes?
Yep.
Is a health center with pediatrics, internal.
Gotcha.
Right.
So this exists in a vacuum, obviously, they could leave in 30 years. This zoning bylaw is for the foreseeable future, and so all of the buffer zone requirements are still requirements. If somebody moves in, same thing, right? If somebody came in a year that wasn't there last year, and then a company wants to put something there, even though now it's in the overlay, it's not allowed.
Got it.
So there's not really a way to parse out every single combination in advance. So, yeah.
Chair Gaffney, if I
Go
may.
ahead. Yeah,
Liz, didn't we rezone that entire area not too long ago? I mean, within the past 5 years, where Atrius Health and like,
We
Didn't we
did, that's
rezone it?
IG.
Is-
Yeah,
yeah.
this might have been an old map.
Okay.
Or
It's I.
It's I.
That's Innovation.
Innovation. I remember
District.
Scott
We did.
Weiss coming and doing that. You're correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Correct, yes.
That's
What
correct.
a memory.
Yes.
So can we zoom?
And so right now, as the zoning also stands, everywhere that's purple, technically, a medical marijuana facility could go.
Which purple?
All the purple.
So it's not just the scrub?
So it's not just.
So, no, so this is actually reducing it to just the stripes.
That's the only.
What do you mean, everything?
Yeah.
So
would that
everything that has stripes could be recreational, anything that's purple is
Oh.
medicinal.
No, it is currently medicinal. So
You mean it
the
could-
change.
medicinal could go in
Exactly.
purple?
So right now, it is, technically, it could
Medicinal
go in
marijuana
the
can go in those
purple.
spots.
But what we're proposing is to scale all of that down
Liz-
into just that
Is
overlay.
that correct?
Is that, yeah, I was going to say, I don't know that we ever agreed on that.
So medicinal marijuana, from what I recall, we have some strict buffer requirements, which is why it limits a lot of the places where it can go. So right now, medicinal marijuana can't be within 1,000 feet of another marijuana, medical marijuana facility, within 500 feet of a parcel boundary of a religious institution, within 1,000 feet of the nearest parcel boundary of a place where children commonly congregate. And it has to be, and it can't be on a parcel that touches residentially zoned property.
So a lot of that purple wouldn't apply.
Yeah, same concept where it still needs to comply with the buffers, but, yeah.
So it
So
sounds like we have more strict buffers for medicinal marijuana than we do for recreational marijuana, and I'm not sure how that makes sense.
they're the same
The
buffers.
buffers?
I'm not sure why we're
The
even,
buffers, then some of these properties are completely out of the,
right, but if we already have specific areas where we're allowed, I mean, why aren't you utilizing those areas? Why are we going for another change? If you, I mean, you find a property that's going to satisfy your needs within this zone?
I think that the idea was more to go where traditional retail businesses are, and they're designed for higher traffic, and that was kind of the discussions that took place, is it's in operation much more similar to a package store than it is to a industrial manufacturer. And so that was sort of the reasoning behind why the retail zones made more sense.
Okay, why don't we formally kind of go through the board here, and what I'll do is I'll start on my right-hand side, and we'll swing around. Ms. LaRue, I'll start with you for,
okay.
go forward now.
I'll need to spend a little bit more time with the map. I have concerns about properties that are touching residential, and I think there's quite a few of them here. So that's going to be problematic for me.
Okay.
I need to look at it further. But the other thing, and this is not about your map, not about the map at all, but I firmly believe that before we go and change this law, we need to get a temperature on the town.
Okay.
We need to find out what the town people really want, because the only check-in we ever had with them was when they voted on this 7 or 8 years ago, and they said no. So I don't feel that it's our place to assume that they've changed their position on that. And I think we've discussed this before, that I think it's important for us to put together a way to find out what the town thinks now.
Yep.
And that's probably going to mean a referendum vote. And I don't think it makes sense for us to proceed too far down this path until we get that answer.
Okay.
Mr. Rappaport.
I'm going to mirror Member LaRue's. I honestly don't feel like we should be spending any more time on this. I can't necessarily say I'm in favor. I'm concerned about the same issue about this abutting residential properties. I'm concerned that we're going to be spending a lot of time on something that the community doesn't want. Oh, I'm sorry. I think we're going to spend a lot of time on things that the community isn't interested in having in Burlington. If it was, I mean, marijuana dispensaries are, I mean, they're pretty, there's a lot of them. and they deliver to Burlington, even though maybe they shouldn't necessarily deliver in Burlington. But we've also, looked into that as well. But again, I think we have a lot of things that are really important, and I don't think this is on the top of the list. At least it isn't for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Covino?
Yes, I would agree with previous two speakers that the last I heard, even though it might have been quite a few years ago, the town voted that they did not want recreational marijuana in Burlington, and I haven't heard any different. So if we were to take a vote on this, I would have to vote no, to recommend no to town meeting, because I haven't heard differently from the town. So I don't know if the petitioner could actually petition the selectmen to have it put on the ballot for April, and you might want to look into doing something like that.
Okay.
I think that from what I'm hearing, we're reluctant to really do anything. Even some people are reluctant to even send it to town meeting because the town as a whole has said no, and we haven't heard anything different. So
Okay.
Okay.
that's my 2 cents, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Member Natola?
I would strongly agree with them that the town would have to make a decision like that. And if I had to vote right now, it would be no, because I haven't heard anything from the town that is saying anything different right now. And with the information that we've gotten, people could deliver if they needed it, so they have them close enough that someone could be satisfied. So we'd have to hear from the town.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Impemba?
You wouldn't be interested in putting a hardware store in one of them?
Maybe. Maybe.
I'm going to mirror theirs as well. I have the same feeling, and I think it's just, it's difficult to take a board and go against what, the town has voted on. So until I see differently, I feel the same exact way.
Thank you. Ms. Sutherland?
Yeah, same sentiment. I think a big thing that has been missing that I've asked repeatedly now is a cost-benefit analysis. I know you have the deck that says projected yearly revenue, but I need the methodology. I'm a numbers person. I need the methodology and how you got to those numbers.
I can tell you exactly, so.
I would want to spend time looking at it, so if you could forward that on to staff, they can forward that on to me. But I think in understanding too, I think I'll end with that because
Thank you.
I would second everything else.
Thank you, Ms. Sutherland. So the only comment I would have is that, like the other folks, we haven't really heard anything else from residents. We've actually heard the opposite. So we don't, I would say, even kind of my past life, you don't typically react to something with just a single data point. You actually look to have multiple. 100 is a good sample, right, as they say, minimum. So I know this is not a public hearing, and we do have the public hearing for November 21st. So may I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion and continue this item as a public hearing to the planning board meeting of November 21st, 2024.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
So
Opposed? Abstained? 700. Thank you.
can I ask another question? My main goal, I guess, for tonight was really just to see where we were at on forming the subcommittee so that we could do the deeper dive and figure out, do people want this, how to best proceed, and just, we've got to start somewhere,
Yeah.
so.
So I have been in touch with members internally, and I am trying to figure out a date that everybody has free to get together to have the subcommittee.
Wait a second.
Okay.
Why,
Do we need the subcommittee to put together a referendum vote?
can't he just put together a referendum vote? Because, let's be honest, we're all volunteers. And we're servants of the community, which, obviously we're here for a reason because of our love for the community. But in the same vein, we have so much work to do. And if we're all saying the same thing, why are we going to give up our time to focus on something that the community doesn't want? So if they have a referendum vote, we get that, and then we start the work. But to waste, I don't want to say waste time, but to to allocate time where we're not in agreement with what's moving forward, I respectfully disagree to form a subcommittee.
I think the whole reason we were doing the subcommittee was to put together a referendum vote. If we can do the referendum vote without the subcommittee, we should do that,
Yes.
right? And then, if the town comes back and says, yes, we've changed our minds, we want this, then we do the work.
Absolutely.
Okay,
So, but can we do that?
I can look into it, definitely.
Okay.
okay,
Thank you.
great. So moving on to item 6E. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Have a nice night.
6C, and we don't have 6B yet, right?
No, we have.
Okay. So 6D is, there go the other one, yep, thank you.
No, I think you got it right. It's on page 6.
Is she,
Top of page 6.
Top of page 6, right, tippy top. Okay, there he is, 6D. A continued discussion on the accessory dwelling unit, and I'll talk slow here because of our,
Give it
yep.
Melissa's here, I think, if we want to go to the Mall Road.
So we can table that one, or we can actually, if we want to go untable
Yeah.
6,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to untable item 6B.
Second.
is a motion and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Abstained, 700 to untable it. Item 6B, if you're ready.
Yes.
All right, so item 6B is a continued discussion, the Mall Road Mixed-Use Zoning District.
Yes.
Melissa Tinkopoulos, the Economic Development Director. Please. You're ready, I'll give you a second.
Thank you.
There? Yeah?
Yes,
That sound good?
yeah.
Perfect
Thank
time.
you, Chairman Gaffney. Thank you, Planning Board, for hearing kind of the continued discussion from the previous meeting. This is the mixed-use district. It's the mixed-use innovation district that's coming to town meeting on in January. And the body is here to consider a new district that will now go over approximately 12 parcels. So if we go to the next slide. Actually, this, yeah, we can go to that slide. Yeah, no, this is fine. So what we put together, a few slides to kind of orient those people at home listening. I know the board has been very familiar with this. I want to point out a couple of changes that have been made since the last planning board meeting. But I also want to just let folks know that, you know, the new zoning district is really Article 14, and that's the bylaw right there. The other pieces are kind of more of the enabling or enacting elements, so you will see that at town meeting. They will have other pieces of this bylaw. One is just to include a map. The other one is to just provide a new column for all the uses allowed. So you have the regular use table, but you will have a new column that says mixed. And that has been provided. I don't know if I have a hard copy for everyone, but I will make sure you do. Land use has been looking at that closely, the Land Use Committee. So we can go to the next slide. So from our last discussion, there was a lot of concern in terms of 60 Mall Road. That's a parcel. I don't know if we have a, can you mark it with a cursor?
Would it have been this?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Caleb. So the overall district has been pruned back. We have talked about it now more in a phase 1 and a phase 2 approach. Phase 1 is this, I guess, fuchsia pink district, and phase 2 we're not including currently, but that's the larger scope that we have since pruned back. One parcel that was adjacent to Laura Lane residential area has been now pulled back for a little bit more thought in terms of the height allowance and anything else that might be needed based on our discussion from last meeting. If we proceed to the next one. What we wanted to do with the slides this time, last meeting we were really good about going through the actual text and flipping through this document, this page. What I thought we could do now is just kind of maybe review it at a little bit more of a practical level for folks who would be using the bylaw. So the big thing that we've been thinking about for the infill is not only to, enliven and kind of sustain the Mall Road corridor, but is really, if we as a community are moving it forward, we want to see some things about, that are brought into new development. And the 20% open space has been a real key. We heard that through the workshops, we heard that through focused groups. And so right here, one element of the open space has been the Greenway, the Vinebrook Greenway. Now, we put this on the map so that we can start to identify and direct public and private investment along this greenway. In particular, we know that there's been some development interest from Simon Mall and Macy's on that bottom corner. And our goal is to have this in the regulating plan so that it's incorporated in any future development. The regulating plan makes that more of a standard for the future development than it would be otherwise. So that is why we have highlighted that and wanted to show that to you guys in this slide. The other two pieces, just for consideration, the TWR Park is outside this district, but we included it in the zoning to say, hey, if you're doing something maybe in a smaller parcel, like say one of those district pink sections, maybe a contribution to TRW Park would be an alternative. So the planning board, through the application and site plan review, would be able to negotiate that and allow that to happen. The buffer zone is also on the regulating map. So what we wanted to do is really kind of say, as this development occurs, we have that blue line that says it's called the transitional buffer or district transitional buffer. It's an indication, it goes along the greenway. It could be more landscape, it could be more screening, but it's another way to indicate to any development that's along that side, in particular Kohl's, Brixmor, or Linear, that this area is sensitive to how it's looked at from the other side, the residents on the other side. So that is what is included in this as well. Go to the next slide. The other thing on this regulating map that we talked about a little bit last meeting was the commercial streets. And why that's important is there are regulations on the building design once it's facing or adjacent to these green dots. And these green dots are really indications of the type of roads and the type of streetscape and public realm we'd like to see down these corridors. So and then they have a designation. So that way, when you're looking at your zoning, if you're coming in and you're looking at maybe the corner of Mall Road and Middlesex Turnpike, those are two gateway boulevards. Thank you. Thank you, Caleb. And then as you go inside and as you start to think of any development that might happen exactly between the district and Macy's, for example, that is also a designated road or street that we'd like to see enhanced over time, and we're calling that a commercial street. It has the dash and the dot, and then there's a smaller street called the local street. Now in your zoning, I can go to the page, this is part of the complete street section. So these roads that are outlined in our map, sorry, didn't mark these very well, have a particular layout. So the idea is, again, we're able to communicate better to the development community what the expectation is in terms of the right-of-way, the trees, the greenscape, as well as outdoor amenity space and more activation, really, as we think of this, versus if we can think of Citizen Bank or Crate and Barrel for that matter, those are buildings, those are infill, but they do not have the orientation, the grid, or the public realm connection to the other buildings adjacent. And that's what we're really stressing. So if we go to the next slide, I tried to give an example of at least a development site. And we can go to, so this is an example. This is completely theoretical. It's trying to give an example of how something might be looked at from a developer's perspective and how we as a community would work with this new zoning. So the red square there is an example of one of the infill spots. Again, I would say the mall is just so uniquely positioned for infill development. It has over almost 6,000 parking spaces that can be consolidated, just surface parking spaces. That way we can retain the viable commercial and infuse it with some other active, components, whether it be the residential or potentially, more commercial in the future. And that's really what we've been thinking about. And that's, I think this aerial gives a little bit of example of that. Here is just another picture a little closer. You can see the cross section at that bottom strip is the cross section of the street, which gives you the building front from Kohl's, the right-of-way, the parking lot, and then more parking lot, more parking lot, more parking lot, and then the mall. And then, so that is kind of our current cross-section, and this is what we think we can enhance with some of the streetscape design guidelines. So, and we won't go through, Caleb, on this one, we won't go through all of them. I'll give you like kind of a stop because we're still working on through some of this. But, so here's another picture of where we see that this new zoning offers more improvement and more guidance. If we go to the next slide. So this is currently what happens under our current zoning. Blank walls, wait.
Oh, sorry.
Blank walls, lack of pedestrian connections on the left, buildings that face our main corridors from the back, so the loading docks, the utility, and the lighting. And we, as we have been talking to everyone in the community, there's a lot of interest in enhancing the walkability, and part of walkability requires a lot more investment and attention to the public realm. And that's why this zoning has kind of moved forward from not just the traditional FAR and what can be built in the building envelope, but to really focus on the open space for the 20% open space as well as the public realm. And then the guidance on the streets helps developers orient their buildings, and you will see as on the next slide we can kind of show that. Again, kind of looking at, this is more just a schematic. We can go to the next one. What we want to start to show you is that we're not the developers. What we are, we're the community and we're the land use policymakers. And what we're trying to bring to town meeting is an option for a new policy. So we cannot say, hey, on that yellow pad, there's going to be, this building exactly, looking like, brick or not. But what we can say, this is where we want the orientation, right? And this is where the zoning says we'd like to tuck back some of our parking. We kind of want to make sure that the facade is oriented to these gateway and collector type of roads. And that's what the A, B, C, and D has. I'll send this to Liz. I don't think you have a physical copy. And then we'll just go to two more, I think, on this. In the zoning, we have a parking lot landscaping that's already been adopted through the earlier effort through the planning board. Just, okay, how do we enhance the landscaping? How do we make it better, not only just for green aesthetic points, but for sustainability? And that's kind of where we've worked with conservation, Eileen, John Keeley, as well as we'll be going to conservation as well to talk about the zoning. Garage design is also included. That will be in your more supplemental guidelines, but it does talk about how to mask it, how to orient it in the back if you're going to consolidate it. I think we have, and B, that kind of pathway, which is labeled B. Again, we're talking about pedestrian connections through parcels, through bigger blocks, so that is also identified in the zoning. And you can go through, all those are labeled. And I think we have one more on that. And then a lot of people have asked, okay, well, then what's allowed? So what we've allowed, and this is what we've talked a little bit from the last meeting, are different building types. So on that, if we go back one slide, you can see now here roughly is the development pad. This is where you would orient some buildings, what's required. Now if you go to the slide forward again, and then we'll take a break and take some questions. These are the types of buildings, at least not just the block. Imagine putting that picture on that, on those development pads, but this is an idea of the size, a type, and use that can go in there. So a mixed use can go in there, a multifamily can go in there. The orientation and the activation on that street level still is required, but so can some commercial uses. Retail is also part of that when we say general commercial, although right now we've looked at some of the demand analysis. Because it's the mall area, you're not going to get as much retail, just, naturally. But if it's okay, I'd like to kind of stop with that and then maybe ask some questions and see if that helps clarify, some of the questions from our last meeting on where we left things.
Okay, thank you. Staff, any comments before we start?
No. This has been helpful for me too. I definitely want to see how the sausage gets made. So we have this booklet, but how does it actually come to fruition? It's helpful for me to understand, and I think it's going to be helpful for you guys to understand, and the town meeting to understand is how a bill becomes a law, how a mixed-use zoning district becomes a mixed-use zoning.
Great, thank you. We'll start over to the right with Mr. Covino.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at this, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, as a PDD proposed by the town rather than a developer. Am I somewhere?
I would say that's one really good way to explain it, in a lot of ways.
Okay. Other than that, no, I don't have any questions
Okay.
at this time, Phil. Thank you.
Ms. Rappaport.
So, staff, correct me if I'm wrong, we had just rezoned or worked on a project plan from everything from Press to Mall Road, correct?
So we recently did permitting for the district.
Correct.
PDD, that is correct.
Okay, so now there potentially is some construction there. We're being asked to extend one Burlington Mall Road, then this rezoning. I mean, I think it's a lot, kind of all right after each other. I'm a little concerned about what traffic's going to look like. I'm a little concerned about all of this construction happening at once. I'm wondering if it can be done in phases. I'm also hearing a lot of pushback from the community about rezoning certain areas of the mall because some of the owners haven't necessarily worked well with the community and not paying their taxes. So maybe, I mean, and am I allowed to call people out here? I mean, Macy's hasn't paid their taxes, or we've been having issues with them paying the appropriate share of their taxes for what? How many years? Does anyone know? Because I know it's been well before.
I
since
might
I've been
know
on.
that one.
It is, right. So, the feedback that I'm getting from the community is, why are we going to enhance their property when we're already having difficulty with them? I mean, maybe that's part of the phase-in that we do, because, as to Melissa's point, we're not developers, we're community leaders looking out for the greater, for the better interest of the community. So if we take this down in phases and work with those owners, maybe we'll have a different outcome rather than throwing everything, all together at the same time.
Thank you. Ms. LaRue.
Can we go back to that slide that showed the two pads with the parking? Because I just had some questions about, I know it's just an example, I know that's not actually being developed, but I can still picture it. So questions. Am I correct in understanding that these buildings, if they were buildings, the yellow, would have to be designed so that on all four sides, they look like the front in a way. There's no back wall facing any of these streets. Is that correct?
That's pretty much correct.
I just want to make sure I understood that. And then for the orange, that's the parking lot, or it could be a parking garage. Am I correct in that understanding?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So I just want to make sure I was understanding it. I think this is very helpful for me to try to visualize. And as we've discussed, I still have concerns about this. My biggest concerns are regarding height. And some density, especially when it comes to the housing. The feedback that I've always heard from the town when it comes to housing is that they don't want more large-scale apartment buildings. And that's what this would be. So I have concerns about that. But I did find this presentation very helpful, and I still need to spend more time with it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Sutherland.
I mean, obviously, we've been going through this forever, well over a year. I think there's a lot of confusion around when this would kickstart construction. I mean, this is very much kind of future planning. The 1 Mall Road, yes, we have to extend. The PDD we did in the district, I mean, that's kind of internal. And again, not immediate. So I don't have any concerns over this being too much. I think we're at a pivotal point where if we see construction coming in, we want to guide it in the way we want to see it. And this is enabling us to guide it in the way we want to see it. I know that we had discussed last meeting some concerns over the lab building height. I think that was the one that was the highest. But I think also it's an opportunity for us to kind of look at, if you look at Third Ave, that height is pretty high. So I think if we just kind of take some looks at examples that might help when discussing with town meeting. I think I had saw it was 15 units per, right? And isn't there something similar that we're going to be allowing for middle housing?
I didn't think it was 15 units per acre here. I thought we were talking 20 to 30.
Well, it has the density bonus. So what most likely would happen is that to build at the scale, it is the 6 stories at a higher density. So that is, but we keep it as a special permit so that you have some oversight as a planning board. And also, we think that that's part of where we can, negotiate a little bit more on that public benefit side. We have the 20% that is standard for the open space. It can be achieved several different ways if you look in that open outdoor amenity space. But then the public benefit, if it goes beyond the 15 units, that's where there could be more negotiation for whether maybe it's the TWR park, maybe it's something else that also could be achieved.
So 15 units per acre is allowed without a special permit.
Right.
Anything more than that would require a special permit and therefore the negotiation process. Am I correct? Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to
Okay,
jump
no,
in,
it's
but I
fine.
wanted
Yep,
to make
that's
sure I
fine.
understood. Thank
Yep,
you.
Ms. Long, go ahead.
Yes, I think there are, I think this is, my perspective is a pretty healthy balance between enabling continued growth in Burlington while still maintaining what we would want that growth to look like. So I'm excited to see this move forward. No other comments?
Thank you. Mr. Impemba.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I had my concerns, I voiced a lot of my concerns last time, and I think some of them, for the most part, are mirroring what Barbara had said. I'm concerned about height. I'm concerned about the fact that we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 different major housing initiatives right now between middle housing, between that and, what the MBTA housing, and looking at the exactly, that's, which I'm very concerned about, to be honest with you. I think the way we need to look at these things is we need to look at them as, okay, you can zone them, but you can zone it a certain way, but what you need to look at is the worst-case scenario. When you zone it so that you can put basically 2 houses on every lot, assume that everybody in the town is going to put 2 houses in every lot, because that can happen. That's a scenario not likely to happen, but it could be likely to happen over a period of time. If you did that, you've now lost the character of your town. You know, we've got so much we've only got so much infrastructure to handle housing, you know, right now, between schools and between, you know, police and fire and all kinds of things like that. I mean, if we implement all of these housing initiatives, I think we're going too far, too fast when it comes to that. I want to put the brakes on a little bit and kind of, you know, do one at a time and figure out how that's going to impact the town, how that's going to impact, you know, the infrastructure and the school systems and all that stuff before we go. You know, I love the concept of, you know, creating streetscapes and, you know, beautiful walking areas and connectivity between these, you know, office parks and all these things down here. The concept is great. I'm just afraid that, you know, if we implement all of these initiatives at the same time, we're going to lose control over how much housing gets built in this town. And I'm concerned about it. And so that's my biggest worry. The other is height things and, you know, and expanding it out into areas that it's not expanded to now as far as height and density and things like that. So major concerns about it. Not that I think your planning is great. I love the fact that you're taking these initiatives on and you're doing things to areas of town that we really would love to see things done to, not to. But I just feel like we need to do it at a little bit slower pace. We need to understand how each of these are going to impact before we go into all of them at the same time. My thoughts on it.
Thank you, Ms. Natola.
Yes, on that last slide that we had up, and it showed the buildings with the parking lot, I just wanted to let you know, it seems like lately, we've been saying like they may put, instead of parking lot, parking garages, and I'm not a big fan, and I'm only one person, of parking garages. I'm not a big fan of the look. I'm not really, I don't feel safe in them, always entering them. I prefer a parking lot. I know we're trying to cut back on some of the space, but I just like the concept better and the look of that a little bit better. But I know in some cases it has to be done. I've seen it already in Burlington, and it makes sense to do it. But if we're trying to make it look prettier and for that walking concept and everything, I think it would look better in open space with trees and green space and things like that, only for the look. And I just wanted to tell you that now, because I think you do great work and everything you've done is really, really been helpful. But I'm just not a fan of parking garages.
Okay. Thank you,
Chairman,
Ms. Natola.
Mr. Chairman, if I could respond to that.
Sure, of course, go ahead.
So I think part of what this is, it is the long-term development. And I think with the site plan review, there would be more control over the design by planning board. Also with the supplemental design guidelines kind of indicate the type of screening and other things that could be incorporated into the design to make it safe. I think also just wanted to share that, you know, through the communication of Simon Properties and the representatives from the property owners, that usually speaking, the structures are for those projects that would go in. They're not for the users of the mall. So the mall wants to retain its surface parking, and that's part of, you know, what they would like to do. It's not that the structured parking is replacing surface parking for the mall. It would typically replace for a project, in particular if it was a mixed use or a multifamily housing project. That's how, you know, the structures are really associated with that, to consolidate the parking and allow for that infill piece. And that's kind of, you know, at least one component of that, and it doesn't all happen at once. We have heard the cost of structured parking is about $30,000 per space. And so what you have is if you have 300, spaces that you need to occupy, that's $9 million in just the parking structure alone. So that's why there's, this balance, as we've talked about, of like, you need the density to justify consolidating the parking, and that's also why you wouldn't just see a parking structure occur just for the sake of maybe opening some green space, because it is so costly. And that's part of why this analysis has gone on and worked, not only from the community side, but the developer side.
Thank you.
So one other comment.
Go ahead, Mr.
So what we've also found over time is that when we do these mixed developments and we try to get, we do them for the most part to build some, some streetscape and to build some creativity, atmosphere, and places where people want to be and want to thrive and want to have businesses and things like that. But what tends to happen is that they build the housing first. So it's the first thing that get done. You put these great concepts and these great ideas into place, and then the developers just come in and build housing, and that's, and they all the other stuff lags behind. You know what I mean? It doesn't. So I mean, is there a way to put assurances in place that this stuff is not going to happen that way? That it's not going to
Well, I think my thinking on that is that we do have 8 million square feet of commercial in this district. If you look at the whole 500 acres, there's 8 million square feet of commercial office space and retail. So that we have a lot of existing commercial. What we're trying to do is create a special place, inject, some life through the residential, being strategic about that, so it enhances and keeps that value and keeps those existing 8 million square feet occupied and at good rents, good occupancy levels, and that's the thrust of what we're trying to do. It is true that, by opening up, there's existing real estate cycles. Obviously, housing's an initiative for the state. It's been, something that even nationwide, we know there's demand for housing. So currently, that would be likely to be some of the first developments in. But also, we have in this zoning the provision that we have a 60-40%, and this is what we talked about a little bit at one of our meetings. Under each project, we do want, our development site, we do really want, and we communicate it in here, that the balance should still predominantly be commercial. You may use and interject the residential piece, but on balance, it should still be predominantly commercial throughout this district. And we talked to town council how to best do that. We talked historically about how Town Center had a percentage for the whole overlay, and then the first thing to come in was the housing. So the way that another approach Town Council recommended and other communities have done is say, by development site, you allow a 60-40 split. You can count existing commercial, so you can count existing, that 8 million, you still can count some of that. You can add new, or you can show us where your development pad will be later on. You can also, come to the planning board, say, hey, we want to build this, but we just can't build this right now because no one would buy it, no one would finance it. But we can build, the residential. So we understand that there are real estate cycles. We tried to put in a provision for that, and I think that the overall effort to maintain and keep the, long-term value of our commercial district is part of, why we're coming to you guys, to the body town meeting to talk about this, because they have asked the, Economic Development Office, working with planning, how do we sustain our economic engine over time? And what our recommendation is to explore a mixed-use land use policy in this commercial district that is void of any residential currently, and that is void of open space, that is void of a sense of place beyond those places once you're in them. And we think we can just do a better job directing the private investment community as they think about here, Burlington.
My thoughts, though, it's just not, I feel like that area of town, you know, where the business and the retail and all that is that's almost like I hate to say it, it's almost like a community property. I see that as an area of town that gets used almost more by other towns, and, you know, as far out as 10, 15 miles that are using that part of our town. I feel like the concept that you're talking about, bringing housing in to sustain business, is more of a concept we need to concentrate in the center of town with. That's the area where we need to bring housing in to sustain the businesses. The rest of the world is sustaining our businesses in that area of town. And I think they're doing a pretty good job of it, because in my lifetime, and I've lived here for a long time, in my lifetime, I've never seen that mall so busy. Never. I have never seen, every time I drive by that down the highway and look over at the mall, every spot in that mall is taken, and that's never been the case. I mean, 10 years ago it wasn't the case. 15 years ago it wasn't the case. I've never seen it so busy. I don't think there's any vacancies in the mall. I think, for the most part, businesses are doing well down there, and things are being sustained fairly well. I think the district is a whole cool concept that is being redeveloped as we speak. You know, the Third Avenue is something that people that I talk to from 20, 30 miles away talk about. So I think by expanding here, all we're doing is we're creating housing so that we can build more commercial space. And I don't think we need to do that. I think, you know, I guess it all depends on how you want the town to go. Do you want the town to go, you know, lose its character that it has now and just, you know, become more of a city? Then I think we should go in that direction. But I feel like that's been the beauty of our town forever, is that we have this, you know, very, you know, manageable commercial side of town that gets kind of used as a community use by every town around. And then we have our beautiful bedroom community side of town that, you know, we want to make sure that we want to create a downtown that's walkable and things like that. But I don't know. As much as I like the concept, I'm not sure that I want to see the town embrace that concept right now. I don't think for one, I'm not ready for that kind of growth to be taking place in town. And I think we get growing pains now. What do we get? A couple 100,000 people daytime, and you know, nighttime 25,000. And you know, what are we going to do? Grow it to 400? We're trying to grow it to 400 daytime. You know, and you know, 50,000 nighttime. I don't know. But I think with that, you're going to bring so many more problems when you bring that kind of much more development down in that area. We think we got a problem getting to the mall now at Christmas time or at the holiday time or whatever. We're not going to be able to move in that area of town. We get complaints now about people not being able to move in that area of town. We're not doing anything to the roads any different than what exists right now, but we're going to just bring in much more density into those areas. I'm concerned about it. And it's not to make light of all the work you've done down there. I think you do phenomenal work there, but I'm just very concerned about it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Impemba. You know, my thoughts here is just from a height standpoint of just looking around what we have in town. And one thing, I was over at Corporate Place this morning, and the Friendly 40B that we put together, that's a 6/1. So it's 6 levels of apartments, 1 parking garage, and kind of get the scope of what we're talking about here. Yeah, and I know this is a balancing act of, you know, kind of keeping, you know, Burlington on the map and vibrant, and it's a tough spot to be in for sure. So a lot of good work on that end. You know, I as well has been part of that, those workshops you did. So there's been a lot of input to that. So, go ahead, Ms. Natoli.
I just want to throw one thing. I know I keep beating this up, but a performing arts center would be so nice to feed off of the rest of the restaurants and all the places. We don't have that in that area, which would take a big space you know, to use, and it would just bring in so much money and feed all the other businesses, because most people will go to eat before they go to, or after, or whatever. And I just think it would be such a great idea. It's the one thing Burlington doesn't have. And so many towns have it, and I, for one, go to these other towns just to use that. And I think it would enhance Burlington a lot. I would say there's not much Burlington doesn't have, but we don't have that. And it could be used for so many different things.
Okay.
You know, so.
Anything to close for this session?
For closing, for closing arguments, for.
I didn't say argument.
Well, again, thank you. I hopeful this is kind of a little bit more information. And I think, I also just wanted to add, because I know the height conversation has come up, often in different, of the different communities. Google Earth does have a great height app, and I did measure Macy's with their mechanicals. They're actually at 74 feet or 72, 74 feet. We have a height limit here of 70 feet. The PDD at Northwest Park, they allow up to 80 feet. The PDD at the district allows up to 155 feet. And I think so, and then the Archer, for example, is actually lower. I think they're at either, if I can remember off the top of my head, it's in the 70 feet. So we tried, the height, has tried to be responsive to, again, the balance of what works feasibility-wise and trying to be sensitive to at least precedent buildings that we've allowed here in town. So, but thank you again for your time. Appreciate it.
Sure. Just one, Mr.
One last question. Are you 100% sure that this is going to January town meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
100%.
I just want to make sure.
The answer is yes.
Okay, because that affects things we're talking about later.
Yes, 100% sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for all your effort here.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead. please.
Just one word so you don't run away with crying. I think you're doing what I think the economic development person's job is, and that is to look forward
Thanks, Ernie.
quite a bit out to make sure that we maintain our viable commercial, industrial tax base. And if we're not if we don't like what we see, I think it would be up to us to suggest something else.
Oh, 100%. You're 100% right.
I-
Doing
I
exactly
agree,
what you're
though.
supposed to be doing, and then we need the feedback we
You're
feel.
doing a great job. It's just, I think it's a lot.
It's
It's a
change.
lot.
This is change. The decisions that you're making here, require, kind of a leap of faith, and, but we're rooting it in the best data and projections we can provide. And it's all based on, CBRE, it's data that they've had nationwide as well. So I think we are trying to do that together, so thank you.
Yeah,
And I'm sorry, crying was the wrong word. That
No,
was-
I think you made a good point, Mr. Covino. I mean, because I think you mentioned it in past meetings where, there was a leap of faith of putting the reservoir in, and that was a game changer, to kind of put all the infrastructure, some infrastructure in place so that could, come to where we are today, but now we're looking in the future, right? So, thank you. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to continue this item as a public hearing to the planning board meeting of November 21st, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 700. Thank you. All right, now we're off to 6D.
Oh, 6D.
Yep. 6D is a continued discussion again. Public hearing is next meeting on the 21st. Continued discussion, accessory dwelling unit bylaw submitted by the planning staff.
All right.
Staff, have at it.
Yes. So let me,
This is the ADUs that we talked about before, the accessory dwelling unit.
yes, so,
The state mandate.
so, yes, so this is actually pretty recent. So in August, the state and Laura Healy signed in the Affordable Homes Act. It authorizes $5.16 billion in spending over the next 5 years over many housing policy initiatives. And Section 7 and 8 of that amends the Zoning Act and establishes a new ADU laws and definitions. And what it essentially does is it makes ADUs in RO districts a protected use, like the uses under the Dover Amendment that you guys are very familiar with. And so, what is an ADU? What is this new definition? What is it specifically? So it's a self-contained housing unit, so it has its own sleeping, cooking, sanitary facilities on the same lot as a principal dwelling. It needs to maintain a separate entrance. It can't be larger in gross floor area than half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling, or 900 square feet. So if you have, a 2,000 square foot house, your ADU could not be over 900 square feet. That's the maximum total. If you have a smaller ranch house, it has to be half the size of that ranch. It's also subject to additional restrictions that.
Well, it doesn't have to be. It can't exceed half the size.
Correct, that's correct, that's correct, yes. And so, one of the things I talked about with town council is that in the regulations, we are unable to specify whether these ADUs are attached or detached. So there are different kind of configurations. So you have a garage conversion, a detached ADU. You could have it above a garage, an interior lower level, so a basement unit, garden level unit, an attached, or like an upper level unit. And so again, you've seen this slide before. Why is the state doing this? It allows us to expand and diversify our housing options without requiring additional sprawl, right? This is all from the state. And then, it's another tool in our toolbox to kind of help fix this, broken housing cycle. So if you are an older person, you can move into an ADU and have your children live next door. And, it opens up, it frees up the housing market so that we can kind of get back on track.
I think that's not the focus, though. That's not what they're trying to do. Because if they were doing that, they wouldn't make them accessory units. They would make them in-law apartments. What they're really trying to do is create the closest thing to two-family houses on every lot in this town.
They're not trying to do it, Joe, they did it.
Well, it's not a two-family. Two-family is...
Right, but I'm just saying, they did it. We don't have a choice.
No, but my point is, they're not attempting to keep families together and have parents bring kids into that would be, they would just say, everybody needs to have an in-law apartment. What they're saying is, everybody needs to have rental units. Not needs to, but everybody can have rental units in their houses.
So, but we don't know if it can be detached?
Cannot.
We do
No.
know.
We can't specify.
You can't, you can't say. It can be a separate unit, separate. But these people don't understand when they create zoning like that, you got to look at the worst-case scenario. If everybody in the town did it, you'd have 2 dwelling units on every lot in this town. It would no longer be the town of Burlington. They don't understand the repercussions of their zoning changes, that they're ramrodding down the state.
The possible.
Well, no, ultimately, as time goes on, it will eventually be pretty much the worst-case scenario.
Affordable for everybody right now.
But that's why we're here to discuss, okay, because we can't control it, it's happening.
can't.
So what do we want to do that is within our control?
Right.
All right.
And so
Continue.
this is what I've proposed. So this is in the bylaws that you guys have a copy. We gave everybody a copy.
Yeah, we have.
So if you haven't already, go through it, give me notes. If there's other things that you can think of that would be beneficial, let me know. And I can run it by council, make sure that, all that stuff. So you can only have 1 ADU as of right.
Question on this point. Good, but can we make it, you can only have 1 ADU per lot, period?
Yeah, I was just going to say
No.
the same thing. That's
We
second.
can't.
We
We're
can't.
not allowed to do that by law.
But wait, there's more. So, so here's what I have proposed. Any additional ADUs will, first of all, require a
Right.
special permit, so that's
That I
pretty
understand.
expensive. That's a couple of grand to do that.
Yeah.
And any second ADU will need to be deed restricted affordable.
So the second ADU would have to be affordable.
And for a special permit, can we deny a special permit?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes, but based on,
it's not
it
easy.
has to be based on certain criteria. You can't just deny it.
But you got to deny it on the right reasons.
Right.
Yeah, we're get there.
Yeah, I mean,
So the idea is that we could, if we're saying the second ADU is by special permit, but which we could deny, does the state law say that you allow multiple under certain conditions?
I don't believe so.
So we don't have to do multiple?
No, but,
Okay.
no, the state
They- we
has, my
have to-
understanding is we cannot say you can only have one.
Okay,
We
that's what I'm
have to
trying to
allow
understand.
for
We can make it
more
really
than
damn
one.
hard.
Right,
We
so
can
we
try
can-
and make
we
it
have to
hard.
accept the special permit application, and then it is up to you guys as to how that happens. But wait,
But we
there's
can't
more.
deny
Let's-
it
can we let her-
capriciously.
Can we let her finish?
So that's, the first thing is
Okay.
that any second ADU will need to be deed restricted affordable, and that's not an easy process. You have to do an affordable fair housing plan, go through EOHLC. It's
Okay.
a
It's
lot
hard.
of additional work.
Okay.
I've also capped the dimensional requirements, so, and this is based off, I originally had dimensional requirements are regular for the RO district, same setbacks, except that the maximum height of these ADUs needs to be 20 feet, or the height of the principal dwelling unit, whichever is shorter. So you can't have a ranch house and then, a 30-foot ADU on the property. It needs to kind of, it can't,
Sort of like what we've seen before.
yeah, like what we don't want, right? I had originally proposed adding an additional dimensional requirement that instead of we have 15-foot setbacks in the RO zone. For ADUs, I was considering having it 20. I got feedback from the ZBRC last night, which was a really great conversation, that they thought that would be too complicated, because, we already have garages that are, on the,
Yeah.
just that 15-foot.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was something to think about. It was in there, but we've taken it out. The other thing, and I think this is, I think might put the nail in the coffin, is the combined gross floor area of all ADUs on the lot shall not exceed half the gross floor area of the principal dwelling or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller.
So if they want to build two, you're going to end up with two teeny tiny ADUs.
Right.
Yes.
Correct. One of the
Tiny
things,
houses.
and one of the things that was brought up again at the CBRC, which was helpful, and I would have to run this by town council, but can we set a minimum square footage? So if you're only allowed, let's just say you have a 2,000 square foot house, you've got like a center colonial, 2,000 square feet, perfect.
Yep.
You want to put on an ADU, you can put on 900 square feet. If you wanted to do two ADUs,
You put on 800 and 100.
yeah, yeah,
Ten by
exactly.
10 room.
Yeah, so
A
then,
doghouse.
so then the question is, do we want to put minimum size so you don't get like micro units?
Yeah.
So that's the
Yes.
other.
Yep, good
Yeah,
idea.
we discussed last, I was listening, wasn't part of it, they had said, what about like 310 as a minimum? So then you cannot have 3 ADUs. At max, you can only have 2, and again, the second one would then have to be affordable.
Is there,
The likelihood of 2 happening is,
It's unlikely.
I mean, you never know.
I-
And when there's a will, there's a way.
In the day of Airbnb,
you cannot, no, we can restrict,
So
you
does
cannot
the
have
state-
ADUs.
My
state
point is
law-
this, when people are just looking to make money
Yep,
off
yep,
of
they'll do
units,
it.
that's what it's
Does
gonna
the
do.
state law prohibit how many they have to say, more than one? What does the state law say?
The state law says that you cannot, that you can't prohibit that any more than one, you have to be through a special permit process. We could say you can't have 3, I
You
believe.
can't have 3, okay.
Well, then
Fine,
let's say that.
let's say it.
Okay.
Can we, I have a question, Chair Gaffney.
Go ahead.
If it's not a 20,000 square foot lot with a 100-foot frontage, say if it's a 10,000 square foot lot, and that property has a dwelling and it's grandfathered in, are they still able to put an ADU on it? Because, now, mind you, it's not a buildable lot if that house,
So
they
it
have to
would
go back and
still-
permit it.
So it would still have to adhere to the
Setbacks.
setbacks.
But even if it's not, if it's a grandfathered lot, if it's not a fully conforming lot?
I mean, it shouldn't matter for that, right? Because it's the
Well, I
bottom line is
think
that
it would.
you couldn't allow that now under our laws, so those are our laws that are saying that. They're basically saying, forget your laws, we're going to allow this to happen. And these are the restrictions, and this is how you can restrict it, and that's the only way you can restrict it, basically, right?
Yes,
It's-
counsel on that, and can you imagine having something like, we have a couple lots that are like 5,000, 7,000 square feet. Can you imagine being the neighbor next door, having, the single-family dwelling, and now next thing you know, they want to come out of the woodwork with two
So-
ADUs?
So one of the things that I want to double check on is the section 6 finding, so expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming something, section 6
Yeah.
finding, and that's a special permit process.
Okay.
So it might be that if you are on a non-conforming lot, that you would likely have to come in for a special permit.
Can you, let's definitely
Yeah,
confirm
special
that,
permit or,
please.
Okay.
a site plan review.
Okay.
Okay.
We should,
Thank you.
if that's, we need to put that in there too, if town
Exactly.
council says that's the answer.
Please,
Make it
thank you.
explicit.
Staff, keep on going.
All right.
Yeah.
So additional requirements, you can't have more than 2 bedrooms. No short-term rentals. It specifically says that you cannot divide the lot into two, so it.
Sell it
because and
separately.
sell it separately, because it is, the ADU, according to the building code, according to the assessors, is accessory. It's an accessory use, it's not a principal use.
Right.
So, and then also can't be sold as a condo or otherwise.
Could you sell the single-family home that's on there and keep the ADU for yourself? Or is that one the
No,
same?
you would likely, you'd have to rent it. You could move into the ADU and you would rent out the bigger house.
Got it.
So could you sell the building and not the land, and just do a land lease?
I was going to say that, or an
I
easement.
don't know. I would assume probably.
Can we find that out,
Oh,
like
yeah,
an
we
easement
should.
or a
We
land
don't
lease,
want
to make
that.
sure that we're not,
Can we prohibit that?
I think you can.
Let's try.
Yeah.
and
Good
you
idea.
got to think of every creative
Yeah.
back door that
That's
could
why
possibly
this is helpful,
be.
and your expertise is helpful too, because of your background in
Yeah.
this kind of stuff.
I just, I don't know where I honestly don't see the rationale behind what they're doing. This is like
I know, but
craziness.
that's not.
So we have to focus on the.
Yeah, but you know what?
You've done a really
There comes a
good
point in
job.
time where people have to say, look, we all got to bite the bullet, and I think, my gut feeling is every city and town in the state of Massachusetts would join in a lawsuit in this one. Because it doesn't make any sense. It's just so off the wall. I mean, it's just conceivably, you could now conceivably put 3 houses on every lot in your town.
So I haven't heard any lawsuits coming off of this one, have you?
No, I have not.
Just came
And the
out.
problem is, it's going to affect in February, so a lawsuit is not gonna be resolved by February, so we at least need to get our ducks in a row to have
Because
January
if we
town
don't,
meeting pass it.
then
Otherwise,
something
it's
can
free
come in.
for all.
Yeah.
If we don't have this figured out for January.
Keep on going.
So I got more, but wait, there's
Most
more.
people probably don't even know.
Keep on, yep, we're good.
So we have additional design standards. So again, the appearance of the principal
Nobody-
dwelling unit needs to remain that of a single-family dwelling. And any new entry to an ADU should be located on the side or the rear of the principal dwelling if they're attached. Any stairways to the primary entrance of an ADU need to be enclosed. So you can't have an exterior staircase to your ADU above your garage. That needs to be an enclosed space. Where 2 or more entrances already exist on a house, you need to have one entrance appear to be the principal entrance, and the other entrance appearing secondary. Every ADU needs to have an off-street parking space, and you can only have one access driveway. So per lot, so you can't add an extra driveway, curb cut driveway to your lot.
Would it be already have?
Then
Then you're right.
then they're grandfathered.
My
Question.
neighbors have too, that's why I'm saying
So,
that.
When it comes to the driveway, if you have a detached ADU, does the driveway need to bring you all the way up to the ADU? And the reason I'm asking that is so that the fire truck can get to it.
I don't believe so. I believe that you have to have a walkway, and there is a provision in this.
Is there a
bylaw.
problem if you have a deep lot with a fire truck being able to get to the?
No, because they get the hoses. right?
They'll just drive over the grass?
They don't care.
Okay.
So,
They don't need a driveway. They don't care about your
All
wall.
right, I just want to make sure nobody burns in the ADU.
is there any concern with the ADUs to have at least one off-street parking space, but you can't park off-street in the winter?
No, is it off-street?
Off-street.
Off-street, so that's
Yeah,
off,
yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, yeah. So that's,
Okay,
so
got it.
you have to provide an off-street.
The winter, you got to provide the winter parking. Okay, got it. Okay, keep on going.
In the bylaw, we have citing standards as well. So there
Good.
is a no-go zone, basically a no-build area. You cannot have your ADU go beyond the front existing exterior wall of the principal dwelling along the right-of-way. And that goes for attached and detached. And then if you're on a corner lot, similarly, you can't have, along any right-of-way, you can't have the ADU protrude into the no-build area.
Okay,
So that is kind of,
that's good.
that's
Good.
it. I tried,
I think that works.
know, I don't like venturing into the RO zone. I know it's uncomfortable for me, but here we are, I have to.
You have to.
You
And
did a good
the
job.
other thing is I have to say, we are extremely lucky in this town that we have 3 town meetings, because there are towns
Yeah.
that this is going into effect in February, where by law, somebody can walk into the building department and get a building permit to do this. So we're very lucky in the fact that we have a January town meeting to get ahead of this.
Yep.
And so that, we're definitely ahead of the game.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that's it. If you guys have any suggestions, Joe, if you have any if you have questions or suggestions or things based on, your history and, your, what you've done in the past, expertise, let me know and I'll pass them on to council.
Okay, thank you. Not a public hearing yet, there'll be the 21st. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to continue this item as a public hearing to the planning board meeting of November 21st, 2024.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained, 700. Thank you.
All right.
On to section, item 6E, that's a discussion for Middle Housing Overlay District, the Planning Board Department staff discussion. Once again, staff on Middle Housing, please.
Yes, this is the worst.
Sure.
Why won't it move here? I just want to do this. Okay, and then I want to do that. Okay, hold on. Thank you for your patience. Here we go. So this is the Middle Housing District. We've been talking about this for a while, working on it. I have been working on it with Barbara. We've had meetings with Mike Murray Jr. We just got feedback from Mike Murray. I did, at 5:30, I just forwarded along, and I got really good feedback from ZBRC last night as well. I felt like it was really good. So when this thing decides to go, okay. So as you know, we have an existing situation. We have 2 main housing types in town, single family, and then, your larger multifamily. We did the housing needs assessment back in 2022, and one of the key findings is that we need to diversify our housing stock. So what we've proposed is a middle housing district, and this is fully within the town center overlay. We've chosen areas on Grant Ave and Terry Ave because they're kind of areas that we feel like would be good transition zones between the commercial property and single family as kind of a soft transition. What?
What about Mass Glass?
Oh, and the Mass Glass site, sorry, Mass Glass because.
Just because.
We gotta do something with that.
Because.
Yeah.
So the proposed solution, what are we proposing, is to allow a new middle housing overlay in the town center. So we are, it's required to do ground floor commercial. We are requiring no more than 12 units an acre of housing above with a 3-story maximum. Again, it's 1.5 spaces per unit. That's standard in our bylaw, plus whatever parking you would need for the commercial space. It's subject to our inclusionary zoning bylaw, 15% of the units need to be affordable. And then I would propose additional development standards be added to the town center design rules and regs. Those additional development standards are currently in the bylaw that I had, and the ZBRC you mentioned, we should probably pull those out and put them, do an update
Yep.
separate to the town center
Yep.
design rules and regs. So as far as pre-existing nonconformities, it basically, again, it's an option for property owners. You can choose to build something in accordance with the middle housing overlay, the central business district overlay, or the base zoning district. So, it's just another option. So kind of the benefits, and I feel like this is, correct me if I'm wrong, those of you veterans who've been here for the town center overlay district when it came to be, kind of the desire to do a fine-grained building and street form produces safe, walkable, attractive town center, softer transitions between commercial properties and single family, which we have discussed. And then, 3-story mixed-use buildings lining the street, traffic calming measures, park and walk development patterns. You park somewhere and then you walk around to the different businesses. You want emphasize a human scale street environment. So it's, where the building designs, we want to accommodate cars. We want people to go to these businesses. We want it to be convenient, but we also want it to be kind of safe and attractive and comfortable for pedestrians to be there. We want to have a clear definition of a public space. So we have that, frontage zone where we have, the building, the 10-foot frontage zone, the sidewalk, and then kind of the furnishing zone, and then the street. So you have that
So
kind of
would
public.
it be like the ones in CVS, like in back, like that?
No.
No?
With commercial on the first floor.
So we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So, and then also, I just want to, creates a new third place. So third place, it's kind of a sociology and planning term in that, it's a place that isn't your work and isn't your home. The mall, I feel like in the 80s and 90s, it was the mall was the third space, and the mall still is. But I feel like in this, age of, technology, and we're always online, that, we're really lacking those physical third spaces. I think of, True North is a third space. A lot of people think, when Starbucks had lots of chairs in their facilities, that was like a third space, but places where people can go, gather, interact. So these are some examples of kind of what, from my understanding of the town center design rules and regulations and the kind of the vision of it, and please, veterans of the planning board who were here, tell me if I'm off base, but this is the type of, these are what I would have come up with as potential, examples of what we would be looking for.
I would say maybe the top right-hand corner, top left-hand corner, maybe bottom, but the top left isn't doing it right. I think the top left is a little bit too modernized, if we're going for that colonial feel.
I think, I think it does, it's too far away. It does have, no.
The bottom right,
they
the
call
bottom right was-
dental molding on top. It is kind of more classically
Let me see if
designed.
I can-
It might be,
You can't see
it might be a
See it.
converted industrial building.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I understand, completely understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned,
Bernie.
green space out front too.
Yeah, more green space, all right.
Top right.
So, I mean,
right,
I just
right,
want to hear
right.
from, Joe and Bill and Ernie, are these, is this the vision? Is this the vision?
My vision is more closely aligned with the bottom right one,
Yep.
Yeah.
the bottom right one, yeah.
Okay, so I'm in the ballpark. I just, yep, so that's, and the reason why I feel like we are able to be a little bit more specific in the design and siting standards here is because all of these sites for the middle housing overlay, they would really, there's nothing that's gonna be converted here. All of these would kind of be, they would essentially be.
Start over.
Yeah.
So you'd be starting from scratch. So you would have that opportunity to kind of say, hey, guys, this is what,
Yeah.
these are the parameters, here's
Yeah.
your box, make it work.
Yeah.
the one thing that I can talk a little bit about what was talked about at the ZBRC, which was really helpful. Again, people questioned, why mixed use? And I think that, again, trying to, that balancing act that Melissa's trying to do, we are hearing, and from the administration, we have all these projects. We don't want to lose a ton of commercial tax revenue, so I feel like kind of
Yeah, sure.
middle. Also, there was concern that was brought up that we do allow for structured parking in this district now. Again, we can change that, but also when you're talking about $30,000 a square, $30,000 per space,
parking space,
per
yeah.
parking space, it,
Couldn't we have just garage parking for the residences?
we could do something like that. In the bottom left picture, you see that it's actually a podium building where you see that it has, it has store frontage, but then it also has a
garage,
podium
yeah.
element to it as well, so that you're still parking under, which I don't know how you guys feel about it. I don't find it particularly offensive, but that,
Yeah.
so I'm honestly, given the market, I'm not super concerned that we're gonna be getting parking, intimidating parking garages around here, but something like this that would make it, make something more, might make something more economically viable if you were able to do parking under, and then you could, perceivably get more in rent and kind of make it work financially that way.
Do we allow
then where-
structured parking in the town center now? I thought we did of some sort, don't we?
I'd have to double.
Because at one time, we were actually thinking of a parking garage with
Right.
state salt centers now.
Is there? Am I wrong?
Well, that's, we talked about it on this,
Remember?
in the salt shed area. That's why we tried to acquire it, so we could have
Right.
Didn't we,
some
didn't
central
we allow
parking, some dense parking.
structured parking in the town center now, though?
I don't think we even, I don't think we ventured
CVS.
to structured parking down
they
there
have-
during any of that process.
That's a garage, it's not.
But we talked about it,
I think-
but I don't think we incorporated any, I don't think we incorporated any
I don't
structured
think so.
parking.
I can double check, Ernie, but I feel
Yeah.
like it's kind of a third
Well,
wheel.
right now, the big building, I think they park under.
And as they do Bill 19,
Right.
departments say
So-
they build park under.
Oh, yeah.
Right, that's right.
I have,
The parking deck.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. LaRue.
I wanted to, I have a question for the board, because I've been working very closely with Liz on this. And so all of these things, all these details, I definitely think we need to work on. But taking a step back, my question for the board is, how and when do we move forward? Because to what Joe was saying before, I'm very concerned that if January town meeting opens and we have 3 different housing initiatives on the warrant, they're going to eat each other. And if, depending on how they are, the order they go in, the ADU has to happen, so let's not even talk about that. But I really think that town meeting only has so much appetite for housing. So on one hand, I'm concerned that if we do this in January at the same time as the mixed-use development district, that if that goes first, this doesn't stand a chance. I don't think if this goes first that it will kill the mixed-use development, but if it goes in the reverse order, I think it would. However, if we wait and the mixed-use zoning passes, there's not going to be any appetite for this for a long time. Town meeting's going to say, we've had enough housing, we don't need any more housing right now. And this is the kind of housing that we've determined we need and that the town wants.
Short term.
Kind of, short term?
Yeah.
Like, need it now
Oh.
versus like the mixed
yes.
uses for the future.
It's what the town has asked for. It's what the town has said they want. They have said, they specifically say, when we've asked them, that they don't want large-scale apartment buildings. They want this type of living situation for young families, for seniors downsizing, et cetera. So if we don't present this to town meeting and in January, and the mixed-use development district goes through, I think this dies. But presenting all of this housing to town meeting in January seems like a very overwhelming thing, and I don't know So I'm asking you all what you think.
We promised them this with the MBTA communities. We said, MBTA communities, it's a no-brainer, we're just covering what we've done existing. They said, but we got it coming in January for our view of kind of this middle housing that we can direct ourselves and not have the state tell us what to do. So
So you say
so
we
this,
should move forward.
we're saying we're
I think we
delivering
take a
what we said
swing.
we did.
And I think if it's presented together, my gut feeling is the middle housing is what they would be more likely to pass and not the
Right,
other one.
but they don't get presented together. One's going to go first, and we don't know.
Right,
which
but they're going to know what's on the
Yeah,
agenda,
yeah.
right? I mean, they're going to know what's on the agenda. I mean, town meeting does their homework. They're going to know
Yeah.
what both of them are before, they get voted on, so.
I think they'll go along with middle housing, this type of middle housing.
I don't think we should pull back on this. I think this is a necessity.
Onward.
I think.
Okay, all right, well, you've answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you all very
I
much,
think you
because
take the swing, because either way, like, if you, I mean, like
You
you already
don't.
said, if we don't, there's still a chance of it getting killed, so why not just see what happens in
Okay.
January?
Staff, keep
all
on
right,
going.
thank you.
So that was my last slide. One of the other things that so Barbara and I did sit down with Mike Murray Jr. to talk about this. He hadn't read it, so he seemed pretty positive. He did just recently, like today at 5:30, send over his notes. One thing that I do want to, that I don't know, that I do want to kind of, as he's a developer, he's been in town forever, press him on or get a consultant or somebody to kind of look at is this commercially viable? Like, is this something that somebody on Terry Ave is going to say, you know what, I can tear down this big, warehouse that I have.
Absolutely.
I think so.
Absolutely.
And do this at 12 units an acre
Yeah.
with the design standards and the commercial underneath.
And it'll probably do well.
Yeah.
So typically, if you have the right programming, look at Third Ave, 90%, they have a 90% occupancy rate for commercial real estate because there is a lot of housing in the area. So I mean, if we have that housing to support the commercial, I mean, and let's be honest, that whole area needs a refresh. They're going to get a better return on their investment with the commercial aspect on the base floor than the residential above it. Makes sense.
Yep. Okay, great. Again, this is just for discussion, and we're going to have a public hearing next time. Any other questions? Yep, go ahead.
I have more questions. Does this say in here that there's off-street parking required for all the residential units? Okay,
Yeah,
want to make
yeah,
sure of
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
That's
because
part
that's
of it.
important.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
I want to ask the board, and I think I know the answer, but I just want to throw this out there. Do we want to require mixed use or just allow mixed use? And the reason I'm asking is I know we want the mixed use, but we've never been able to get developers to build that before. I'm not sure why. Is it that it's unattractive, or is it that we gave them the out? So I'm curious to know what people think about that.
Joe, maybe you have...
I think we should require it.
Require it,
It's not
yeah.
going to happen if
Okay.
we don't require it.
100% required.
All right.
So, and
That
my
was
only
the
thought on that is if you go down, if I'm someone coming down the center of town, and I'll go a little closer here, and I look down Terry Ave, where there might be some commercial down there, I'm not going to see it. So if we're going to require it, we've got to somehow open that up such that you see the commercial
yeah.
down there as well. I don't know how to do that.
I think that's where the monument
I
signs
think
are
it's
probably
easy
gonna
for
come into
Terry.
play.
Sign
Both,
bylaw
Yeah,
that
it's
they
easy for
sign.
Terry, it's harder for Grant.
Yep, okay.
The other,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw this out there, and call me crazy. Would it be a bad thing to put parallel, if this were to come to
No.
fruition, parallel parking on Terry Ave?
No,
Or I'm going to throw
Terry
another,
Ave?
I'm going to
No,
throw
you-
another crazy
Like,
thing out, Jim.
That's I love that.
How about public
I
parking?
do too.
How about public parking, if it becomes available? Because if you go around to other towns, they have public parking
Yeah.
spots. So if we put the public parking over, and you're redeveloping now, you put those parking over
Right.
there, now people are walking from that spot to the center of town.
We would have to
Right.
buy the land.
Understood, and which I know we've had difficulty
but with
before,
this
but
design, if you had that, the parking would be behind, just like
Yeah, that is definitely.
other towns. So one last question, and I know, I don't mean to put you on the
No,
spot.
it's
Have you had a chance to figure out the units possible?
So I believe that total, this is back of the napkin, I think.
Okay.
For both, I think altogether it would be
Oh,
like,
it's all together.
I think it would be 200.
Oh, that's it? Oh, that's so not scary. So that's
And
not going to scare
that would
town.
be like
That's not going to scare town
complete
meeting.
meltdown.
Not for next meeting.
Yeah,
I can
and I
try.
would like to see it, I would like to see it, right, like, said, like, how much could go on
The whole area
Grandin,
that
how
should
much could
be
go on
fine.
Terry, how much could go on Mass
No,
Blast.
in the downtown.
I'll try.
In the new areas that we're going to put the zone, do the zoning.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
12 it's
200
12
years for all of it, yeah.
Yeah, and that's 12 units an acre. I think that that's a generous number
Mm-hmm.
than what probably could get or would get built, given
Okay.
setbacks and.
No, I'm happy with
also-
that.
Yep,
Because
okay.
I think that's a number that town meeting will find palatable.
I have a couple.
Please. Yep.
I pulled up Michael Murray's comments, and I remember looking at this too, and I was confused by this. The minimum 70% glass. He even had said this seems like a large percentage of glass. Are there examples that can accomplish this?
On the first floor.
In the first.
Yeah, on the first floor, like retail usage shall be a minimum of 70% glass.
Yeah.
I agree, like that also felt a little,
So one of the
Weird.
reasons, again, is because you want to create that comfortable pedestrian
Yeah.
area. It's not, when you think about you're walking by a blank brick wall.
Yeah.
yeah, I know we don't want it to be blank. I would just love to see, I agree with him, I'd love to
Examples
see an example of like what
Okay.
70% would look like, because it does feel
Okay.
Well,
I mean, I think downtown I would agree, downtown Winchester and those single-story brick buildings, that's,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Right?
they're just never
Your
going to,
standard.
and you got to make sure that it's not just glass.
Yeah.
Well, it's like that.
That it's broken up, but, by window, kind of panes and things like that that are going to
I mean,
make it look more quaint and more,
Yeah.
more colonial, more,
so,
period type like.
so backstory, a lot of these design regs come from an example that was done for downtown Amherst. They were doing a 40R district, and I kind of,
Yep,
Okay.
it's a nice setup down there.
and if
Beautiful.
you've ever been to downtown Amherst, it's like,
okay.
Nice.
it's really nice.
Other comment, I would like to see some community benefits as a part of this.
Okay?
Okay.
Whether it's within the Terry Ave area, whether it's providing it
What
elsewhere
kind
within
of
the town.
benefits?
Like, for example, in the mixed use, we're saying you need to fund a TRW redesign or put into some sort of beautification fund, or I would like to
Put
see
a fountain in
Well,
there.
why don't we have them, a pool of money to purchase a central parking
Yeah,
area
sure.
down in the downtown.
Sure.
Right, yeah.
So then it's directly related to
Yep.
Sure.
what they're going to benefit from
Yep,
too.
absolutely.
Yep, but it also benefits us. And then I do just want to point out a little, in case it comes up at town meeting, a little bit of the irony around construction in a busy street. We're talking 3A, where construction is going to be coming. So if we are thinking this is short-term and going to happen soon, I think, as we kind of talk about some of our concerns with mixed use, we need to address them as well with this. I'm very excited for middle housing. I want to see this happen, but I think I just want to make sure that we have whatever that response is going to be, understanding that there's going to be so much activity on 3A over the next couple of years, that if we're going to also enable more construction, what kind of the plan is there for that. And I'm very happy to see that we would still maintain commercial on this.
Okay. All right, Joe? Okay? Okay.
another question.
Go, Barbara, please.
Cementitious panels. I keep asking what that
Oh,
is.
Cementitious panels, yeah.
Cementitious.
Sounds like cement, so I want to know what it is.
Oh, yeah, we talked about
I
this.
Googled it and it was ugly.
Oh, I liked them.
Really?
Yeah, because you can make them look like wood.
You can, yeah.
I think they were.
Okay, maybe I was looking at something else than you were looking at.
No, you can make them look like wood. It's just a much more efficient overall from an energy and cost
I
standpoint.
guess I must have been looking at something different than what you were looking at.
Better look at the high school. All right.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Ms.
trying to
Redford,
avoid.
any additional?
No, I think
Okay.
we're going to talk about it
Mr.
next week.
Covino.
Or next time too. so.
I would like to make a motion to continue this item as a public hearing to the planning board meeting of November 21st, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 700. Thank you.
Chairman Gaffney, can I make just one quick announcement?
Please.
So I'm just gonna share my screen. I've done this when we've previously had zoning amendments, and just wanted to kind of remind people that we as staff, we keep our website updated at all times. So this is for members of the board, any members of the public who have been listening in, that everything that we've been discussing tonight, which again will be a public hearing at the next planning board meeting, that you can review all of the zoning articles, that if you go to the planning website, you go to the left side of the screen, you go to the drop-down, January 2025 zoning amendments, then we will have each of them listed. You can open them all up as PDFs.
And
all
they'll
the-
get their date stamped,
Yeah,
Staff, can you
all-
put this on
It
our
works?
social
It
media,
works.
the link to our social media, so that, because, I mean, I'd like to think that people watch our meetings,
Just
but
link it up.
Yep.
Link it up. I think
And
it's-
all the presentations that we showed tonight for each of the articles as well, that I'll put those either up tomorrow morning or on Tuesday. So those will be up shortly, so that if you don't want to read through the whole article and you kind of want to get the highlights, everything we went over tonight will be up here.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Matters of appointment, none. Minutes and no minutes. Other matters, Burlington, 1 Burlington Mall Road, which is the Marriott site, which we had approved a biotech building there down in the lower parking lot. Staff.
So, as you recall, there was a proposal to put a life science building in the lower parking lot of the Burlington Marriott at 1 Mall Road. So we had a site plan and special permit for the lab building, and then additionally, a site plan and special permit for the hotel building. This is just in regards to the hotel building. It was a site plan because, again, we were changing around the parking lot layout, adding crosswalks for the site plan, and then for the special permit for the hotel, because we are splitting the lot, we're making it the FAR more conforming.
Yep.
So we needed to do a section, you guys needed to approve a section 6 finding for that. So that is why there's a special permit. And so this is just for the, for that Marriott site, to continue it for a few years, because again, the market for lab space is
It's softened a
creeping
little
up,
bit.
it's soft.
It's no problem.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Okay.
But, so that is, that's why, and we had a memo from the attorneys who worked on that about why that is. So if any, so that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Steph. Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to do it.
Motion to do it.
I love it.
Here we go.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And so let's go through a formal motion if we can.
Okay, I have to read it. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the planning board hereby grants a retroactive 3-year extension of time from September 15th, 2023 to September 15th, 2026 to complete the required site plan improvements and 2 consecutive 1-year extensions of time from December 14th, 2024 to December 14th, 2026 for the concurrent special permit for property at 1 Burlington Mall Road as requested by the applicant's attorney in a memo dated October 29th, 2024.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 700. Thank you.
Oh,
Staff calendar.
calendar, all right. I sent this out last minute, I apologize.
It's in front of you as well.
It's also in front of you, you should all have it. So we had a couple of conflicts in the standard first, third Thursday of the month. So we are starting out with January 2nd and January 16th for January, because we talked with BCAT and it just, we conflict with the Conservation Commission. And so getting a BCAT feed somewhere else is kind of, a nightmare. So we're just gonna go with it. If there isn't anything on the January 2nd, it's up to, talk to the chair, we can, not have it, whatever. February 6th, we're having it, but the second, the 20th of February is school vacation week. I can tell you that I will be away that week. And so I don't know, I don't know, what you guys are gonna be doing with your kids. We do have members with children, so that's another thing. In June, our second meeting in June fell on Juneteenth. And so we did not have that meeting. And instead, we have our standard July 17th meeting, which is our 1 July meeting, but I'm adding in another August meeting, but that's only for town meeting items, because what I've found is that we always run up against the
Yeah.
timeline for September town meeting.
Absolutely. That's a
And
good call.
so, that is just a town meeting item meeting. And then the rest of the year is kind of standard. So,
Excellent.
so I guess I just would like you to affirm this, so we can
I
send it
just
out.
have one conflict, but you won't miss me.
Yeah,
It won't be a
same.
time.
I will miss you, Tony Ann.
No,
but it's-
but I'm just saying, that
Okay.
I got a trip planned in October, but that's.
Do we need a motion to approve?
I don't think we need a motion to approve, we're just going to
Motion
review
to
it.
adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, any second?
Second.
Okay, Ed, just I wanted to go through any unfinished business. Anybody want to add anything before we cook? Okay, we'll call it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 700. Thank you, everyone.
Please, if you have a chance, please sign that.